Hey all, Scott here, and would you look at the time, it's that time again for my weekly birth certificate check. Huh. Turns out my full name is officially Scott. Will eventually take a look at the first Mega Man Wozniak. It's all starting to make sense. This guy, right? Mega Man, Capcom's golden child, right after Ryu, and Leon Kennedy, and Monster Hunter. And Arthur. And the Snow Bros. Alright, he may not be as prominent as a mascot for the company as he used to be, but Mega Man's still a big name in the hearts of many. Nicknamed the Blue Bomber, he spawned 40 acres of games, side series, and spin-offs, which can be crazy hard to keep up with. There's the standard Mega Man games, often referred to as the Classic series, Mega Man X, fundamentally a successor to the classics with a grittier tone and new mechanics, which was followed by the Mega Man Zero games, focusing on the character of Zero in the X titles, which was succeeded by the Mega Man ZX games. Mega Man Battle Network, a tactical RPG series set in an alternate universe, which was followed up by the Star Force series. There's the Mega Man Legends games, which are 3D adventure titles, and that's not even scratching the surface. There's all these handheld side games for the Classic and X series, comics, shows, Mega Man Soccer, the list goes on. The franchise was really kicking in the mid-90s to mid-2000s, maybe even a bit too much, leading to oversaturation. In recent years, Mega Man's definitely hit a rough patch, if you can even consider this a patch, but things are definitely looking up now, with new games being announced, teased, with more collections and merchandise as well. I've loved the Mega Man series, but there's a ton of games that I'm just not as familiar with as others, or just completely in the dark about. I'd love to traverse the entire world of the Blue Bomber, but for now, might as well start with familiar territory for me personally, and really the most fitting place to start in terms of talking about the series. Mega Man, released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in December of 1987. I mainly played this guy on the Wii Virtual Console back in the day, and eventually fully beat the title when the Mega Man Legacy Collection initially released on the PlayStation 4 in August of 2015. All I remember thinking when I beat it was, yep, that was definitely the first Mega Man title, so I should actually form an opinion on it. Let's take a look at Mega Man 1. Development of Mega Man began as a way for Capcom to really get into home console gaming. With them primarily being an arcade game developer, Mega Man was designed as a game that home console players could gravitate to. A 6-person team was on board, 2 members being credited with the overall creation of the character, Akira Kitamura and Keiji Inafune. Kitamura laid the groundwork for the character design in terms of the initial pixel art, with Inafune expanding upon it with animation and illustrations based on Kitamura's work. So yeah, while Inafune is often credited as the father of Mega Man, Kitamura created this sprite art first, which led to Inafune basically doing the rest of it. So if you want to be technical, Kitamura created Mega Man, Inafune developed the character into what we know today. Inspired by Astro Boy and donning a blue getup due to NES color limitations, Rockman was born. Yeah, they toyed with a lot of different names for him and ended up with Rockman, at least in Japan. I mean, it works, I guess, but looking at this character design and even seeing what he does in the game, it doesn't make you go, oh, so that's why he's called Rockman. Capcom USA changed the title to Mega Man as they thought Rockman didn't make too much sense, and I have to agree. I mean, yeah, Mega Man sounds a lot more generic, but it makes more sense. Look at this. This is Mega. Considering they changed the title, it was obvious Capcom USA was concerned with how the game would do in the States, so they made their own box art. I guess they thought, this won't sell here. Now this is what Americans have been asking us for. This is the reason people argue that video games can't be art. The cover was rushed beyond belief and includes my uncle with some shoulders he should really get checked out and a gun running away from palm trees and a sky. Mega Man didn't do too well in North America. The European box art, I think, is pretty good, at least compared to the other regions and in terms of other NES covers at the time. And the Japanese one is okay, I guess. Well, let's finally get to actually playing the game. I'll be rocking out on the version included in the Mega Man Legacy Collection on the Nintendo Switch specifically. Now, a major problem with this version is that it has a feature that's a forbidden fruit, if you will, the rewind button. I'm going to hell. Yeah, I really like this feature being added to so many of the retro game re-releases happening lately, as it's just a nice option to have if you want to use it. And if you love using it to death, I envy you. I have this overwhelming sense of guilt if I'm playing a game and use the rewind button. It's cheating, it's immoral, it's so convenient, it saves myself a lot of time. Damn it! I already beat Mega Man 1 before without the rewind feature, I earned this. Mega Man's story is as follows. Dr. Light and Dr. Wily are colleagues, both in the field of robotics. Light builds a smorgasbord of robots, 6 of them with their own clear-cut purpose to aid society. And in addition to the 6, 2 were created as siblings to each other and would help out around the lab, named Rock and Roll. Wily, jealous of Light, grew cold and planned to take over the world by reprogramming the 6 robot masters Light created to be used for nefarious purposes. After chaos ensues, Rock volunteers himself to be reprogrammed into Mega Man, ready to fight his way to pure justice. Now you won't be getting any of that sweet plot in the game at all. Weirdly enough, this is all explained in the intro to Mega Man 4. So lucky you if that's where you started the series off at. You could read the manual, but you'll get showered in the fact that Capcom USA had no clue what the hell this was, so they just started making stuff up. Save Monsteropolis, Mega Man! At least we got a special thank you from Captain Commando himself. Alright, Mega Man 1. First impressions are key, and they really got the color black down. The game allows us to select any one of all 6 evil robot masters. After a selection is made, we're thrown into the stage where we have to get to the very end to fight them. And that is pretty much it in terms of a simple explanation of what to expect out of a Mega Man game. Seriously, the core gameplay is pretty basic. It's almost like exactly what you think of when the idea of a video game pops into your head. Get to the very end of the level. You can hop and attack. Of course, Mega Man is much more than that, but at its core, it's incredibly simple and easy to understand. Jump with the A button and shoot some pew-pews with the B button. The game's main gimmick is once you defeat any robot master, you gain their ability. Yeah, that means if you defeat Cutman, you get Cutman's weapon, and the thing is, each robot master is weak to another robot master's weapon. They can all be defeated with your standard arm cannon, but if you want to get each boss fight over with quickly, you have to deduce who's weak to what power. Some are just common sense, like Fireman being weak to Iceman's power, while others can be tricky to figure out. Each weapon can be selected at any time with a pop of the start button and replaces your standard pew-pew, but unlike your standard pew-pew, you can't use them all willy-nilly. Using a power will drain its specific thermometer-shaped energy meter, as the manual puts it. You have to use them sparingly, and sometimes only when you absolutely have to. Of course, you can refill the energy for your abilities, as well as your own health bar, with item pickups here and there, but you really should get used to the standard pew because it always does the job and it doesn't run out of energy. Man, coupling the fact you can choose whichever stage you want and that you can use your slain enemy's powers made Mega Man head of the class back in the day. The non-linear progression and array of powers were really interesting and innovative concepts that not a lot of, if any, games were doing at the time. Mega Man 1 is truly an absolute classic. Oh wait, is this game difficult? I think it is. Alright, let's do this. Mega Man 1's design philosophy half the time is to just throw a bunch of shit at you and tell you to suck it up. The entire series is associated with being difficult, and while I don't think it's an absolute necessity for a true Mega Man title to be hard, it's definitely a running theme that started with the original. For better or for worse. This game can be brutal, but in ways that are just unfair due to poor enemy placement and the great slowdown of 1987. Mega Man titles on the NES always had a problem with sprite flickering and slowdown, and it all started with this guy. When you run out of lives, you do have to start at the very beginning of the stage, but your progress in the game as a whole is retained and your energy meters are all replenished. Plus, having to replay the stage isn't too bad considering you've definitely learned a lot about its quirks at that point. The stages themselves aren't that problematic, it's just your first time through, be prepared to die a fair amount of times until you get the swing of things. However, that fair amount of times can be just ungodly frustrating. I hate these things. They're an absolute life bar hog. Look at this. The disappearing block. Somebody at Capcom designed these and said the players will love us. These things are a staple in the Mega Man games, and it's all about pattern recognition. This isn't a hard section by any means in terms of design, but what really pushes it over the edge is Mega Man's control in this game. He just loves slip-sliding around, and it's putrid. I forgot how different Mega Man feels in this compared to later entries. Those games feature much tighter controls, while here it takes a second to stop. I definitely got used to it, but it's still an issue in my opinion. These platforms like to flop down when they cross these markings. Again, not inherently difficult, but Mega Man's weight and the overall slipperiness make it so. The Robot Masters are all fairly easy if you know their weakness. A few of them are pretty simple to take down with just your arm cannon, but a good chunk of them you need a specific ability to do anywhere near enough damage. In terms of weapons I like to use outside of boss fights, Elecman's is great. It shoots electrical beams in 3 different directions, which laughs in the face of the direction Mega Man's hand is pointing, but whatever. However, this thing is the most slowdown riddled weapon out there. Cutman's is pretty nice to take care of these barnacles of enemies, and Flameman's is just kinda satisfying to use. But I gotta be honest, I generally just stuck to Mega Man's standard arm cannon most of the time. I don't know, I think it's just because I didn't want to worry about wasting weapon energy. There is one weapon that you don't obtain through a robot master though, and you have to use the super arm in a Lechman stage to get it. The trusty magnet beam, seemingly an optional item, but not at all, as we'll see incredibly quickly. Up until this point, Mega Man 1 has been generally fairly manageable. It's when we have to take on the Dr. Wily stages that Scott's Ulcer Fest 2018 officially starts. First off, one thing that I do love about the Dr. Wily stages in Mega Man games is that they roll with the mere fact that you have all the weapons, and thus design the stages around them. The thing is, that includes the one that seemed optional, and it turns out to be completely integral here. I've been waiting to use this stamp all year. This is the Yellow Devil, also known as Canary Satan. You can really only get one hit on him before he moves to the other side of the screen. Also, let it be known that he comes out of nowhere at the very start and can still hurt you. This is where the pause trick comes into handy. Mega Man allows you to pause the game with the select button, different from hitting start to bring up your weapon selection. Using the thunder beam and constantly hitting select glitches the game out and gets multiple hits on him. Am I a pussy for doing this? Oh yeah. The next stage's intro was absolutely awful for me. Just an onslaught of constant enemies in just the worst spots imaginable. We have to take on Cutman and Electman and then end things off with a battle against ourselves. Next stage is easy peasy, just get through all this and take on these robots in a bubble. The final stage has us going through this short section and also having an opportunity to nab the Yashichi, the only time it appears at all in the whole game. It refills all of our energy, which is nice, but really? Only once in the whole game? We take on the other 4 robot masters, and finally, it's Wily time, and very quickly it's also end of game time because Wily is fairly easy to take on. So that was Mega Man 1, and was beating it worth it? Yeah! Mega Man triumphantly runs away as the credits roll. And hey, as somebody who started the franchise with Mega Man 2, hearing Mega Man 1's end credits music and finding out that Mega Man 2's title screen is a variation of that was really cool. Well, I did it again, and in terms of my official opinion on Mega Man 1, yep, that was definitely the first Mega Man title. It's not a long experience or an impossible game or anything, but it's just not the most pleasant. I beat it in around 2 hours, even considering the multiple deaths in the playthrough and being incredibly conservative with the rewind feature. While its ideas are fantastic, Mega Man 1 obviously was growing pains for the series. At least visually it looks pretty good for an early-ish NES game. Mega Man games are known for their excellent soundtracks, but Mega Man 1 is just okay in my opinion. It feels like it's still in the Peach Fuzz era. There's this twang to the soundtrack that almost feels like its voice is cracking and it can't hold a note for very long. Still pretty good though, just not as great compared to later entries in the series. Overall, I don't dislike Mega Man 1, it's just not my go-to Mega Man experience. It's very similar to Sonic 1 to me. It does a good job laying the groundwork for the rest of the series, but everything really starts with the sequel. If you wanted to play it, I'd highly recommend the Mega Man Legacy Collection. That way you get all 6 of the NES Mega Man games, so you aren't just stuck with one and you can see how much the series improved on the system. Or you could always try the mobile version. Yeah, that's one way to get your name on a watch list. While it can be brutally difficult, Mega Man 1 can piss me off any day because it spawned a great soccer game. Capcom, where's the Mega Man Soccer Legacy Collection, including all 1 games? Hey y'all, Scott here. I'll take that as a sign. I should subscribe to some boxes! Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to waste money. Now, I've dipped my toes into wasting money by buying a PS4 Pro, but I think it's time to get mega reckless. I'll just look up how to waste money. Oh, it redirected me to lootcrate.com. Subscription boxes are the most foolproof way to get a bunch of shit you don't want. You pay a fee to get a new box delivered to your doorstep every month or so with new products included. There are foreign food crates, where you get all different kinds of snacks from around the world, fashion-based ones, shaving-based ones, grass crates. There's really a subscription box for almost any hobby you can think of. Of course, with one of the most prevalent being dork boxes. Oh yeah, boxes full of geeky goodness delivered to my doorstep every month. Subscription boxes focused around nerdy things like video games, movies, and comic books. Yeah, those are the ones I think of when I hear subscription boxes, and Loot Crate is the most well known. It started back in 2012, and Loot Crate decided the best way to get their name out there is to sponsor any being with a pulse online by sending them a crate to unbox on camera. Yes, I'm sure you've heard something along the lines of, "Hey guys, Loot Crate sent me this. I love Loot Crate. Let's see what they included in the box this month." Oh shit, a sock. Loot Crate sponsorships have probably funded Oklahoma's government. They're everywhere. And one of the only big things that sponsored a ton of social media rock stars that I got suckered into using was 99 Gamers. It was a site you could use to sell video games for virtual coins that you could only use on the site to spend on other video games people were trying to sell. One of my favorite ways to evade taxes. It was a cozy little site for a while. It was a simplified way to trade video games online. You sell games for coins, you use those coins to buy more games. I liked it based off of my experience using the site. But then I didn't use it for a year, and when I checked it out again, they decided to let people sell whatever the hell they wanted. 99 gamers, you can buy Liberty City stories and a rug. So they became nothing more than another version of eBay or Craigslist. It shut down. But yeah, that was the only major thing that online personalities were sponsored by that I tried out. But Loot Crate, man, they sponsor everybody. I'm sure the term sponsored by Loot Crate will be the last thing I hear before death. Well, if people get paid to talk about Loot Crate, then it must be good. Let's check out their website. Alright, lootcrate.com, home of Jacob's favorite box apparently. Well, I can pick a crate. Oh my god, they've really expanded to all different kinds of crates. Last time I checked, they basically only had one Loot Crate box, but I guess enough people said good stuff but needs more Slam Crate, and boom, we got it now. Oh, wow, the Loot Vault. I can pick up random stuff they included in previous crates that are just rotting in their warehouse. Alright, I think I know what I'm getting here. You see, I gotta go with a standard Loot Crate, but they offer a Loot Crate DX. I'd be a pussy for not getting that. I'm not super into comic books, and when Loot Crate says pop culture, they basically just mean superheroes at this point. I'm obviously much more of a video game guy, so I should grab a Loot Gaming box as well. And then why not? Loot Remix. They basically just take random stuff from the Loot Vault, stuff from previous Loot Crates, and cram a bunch of old shit they can't get rid of into a Loot Remix, so let's go with all these! My crates are here! Alright, I've never been this excited to start subscribing! Here we have a Loot Crate DX box, something designed specifically for people who take things too seriously. This cost me $50 per month. I mean, it must be called DX for a reason, so let's dive in. We got ourselves a Captain Marvel t-shirt. Now, when they asked me for my t-shirt size, I personally hit the largest size they offered by accident, so I can officially say I own a Captain Marvel blanket. A hat from Alien, there, we finally have something to store all my complaints about subscription boxes in. A Firefly Mini Masters Figures Little Damn Heroes Malcolm Reynolds. Man, you really have to be a full-blown Firefly fan to have any use for this. At least with the Alien hat, hey, I'm using this right now. Battlestar Galactica Cylon Raider figure, this thing's filling up. The Fifth Element Multipass, oh sweet plastic. Star Trek comic that's exclusive to Loot Crate, but because of that, a lot of Loot Crate subscribers don't care about it, so I can buy one off of eBay for $5. Some Captain Marvel paper. I don't care about any of this. And that is my main issue with stuff like Loot Crate. The general idea of a pop culture box is very broad. It's totally up in the air if you're gonna get items pertaining to franchises you care about at all. I've never seen Firefly, Battlestar Galactica, or The Fifth Element, and these items are total fans-only products. I can't appreciate them if I'm not a fan. At least with stuff like a t-shirt and hat, I mean, I can use those. But a Fifth Element multi-pass, yeah, I'm not gonna use this. No matter what, you will always get something in a Loot Crate you don't care about. Because pop culture means literally anything Hollywood spews out. I think the more laser-focused crates that revolve around a specific brand are much more understandable to me. But even then, most of the time, the value of these crates doesn't always match the price I pay per month. Loot Crate DX cost me $50. The Star Trek comic is fine, but I can buy this online for $5 brand new. The Battlestar Galactica figure I can buy for $2, Jesus. Now, I did take the lowest price I could find for each of the items on eBay, and everything did end up equating to around $50, give or take. But that was only really because the Firefly figure was going for like 25 bucks. I mean, I guess you get what you pay for with this box, but I'd personally rather spend $50 on things that I will definitely like, rather than risk spending $50 on a crate of things I potentially won't care about at all. And for the stuff I don't want, I have to go through the hassle of trying to sell it online or getting rid of it somehow. But I guess that's part of the rush. Opening up the box every month and finding out if you wasted your money or not is just part of the thrill. Yeah, I wasn't too awful thrilled with my Loot Crate DX. I'm also not too terribly interested in a lot of what Loot Crate considers pop culture. There's lots of stuff I like, but the majority of stuff in this box wasn't up my alley. I know a lot of people will probably say, Jesus, Scott, you're so negative. What do you like? Well, if Loot Crate DX didn't have a ton of stuff that appealed to me and wasn't worth the money because while the items barely met the worth $50 quota, now I have a bunch of junk I don't want and it's impossible to sell them because everybody else is trying to sell them for dirt cheap. Let's see what their garage sale in a box is like. Yes, Loot Remix, $15 for this thing filled with past Loot Crate items, son of a bitch. Guys, after I sell these, I'm about to be swimming in $4. There are two specific eras of my life, when I didn't own two Battlestar Galactica Cylon Raider figures, and now. BioShock Infinite socks. I like BioShock Infinite, not sure if I smack it on my feet like it, but hey, here's one thing based on something I enjoy. Scarlet Witch toothpick holders. Alright, now instead of canceling my subscription after I spent $15 on socks I'm not gonna wear, a $2 figure I already had and didn't want, and toothpick holders, I accidentally didn't cancel my Loot Remix subscription. It lives, everybody. I got a second box, let's see if they redeem themselves. Here's a Voltron beanie and scarf. Hell yeah, it's June. Marvel shoelaces, yeah, I am a strict fan of not shoelaces, and a Power Rangers minifigure. I don't know which was lamer. Well, we have one last crate to try and save it all. Loot Gaming. I've been on the record before stating I'm okay with video games, so hopefully this one will feature video games I'm okay with. Alright, Shadow of the Tomb Raider shirt. I like the modern Tomb Raider series, and hey, we can check off the it's a medium and not a 5XL requirement. A Diablo 3 mug. Hey, not bad. Let's see if it's of any quality. Oh shit, it works. And of course, you always gotta round things off with a wallet and hat. $30 a month for this. You can buy like 1/10 of a Switch with that. Don't think I'm a big subscription boxes guy. I get the whole appeal is getting a box full of new stuff every month and not knowing what you're gonna get. Lots of people like that, and I totally understand it. It's just for me, I personally see that as getting a bunch of shit I don't want. But hey, that's just my opinion. Please respect that. Just don't act like this thing is this almighty deity to you. I don't want to hear anything about how you met your wife through Loot Crate or something. So Loot Crate was a bit of a bust for me, but maybe there's another Virgin-based subscription box out there that's up my alley. I've heard of one in the past called the 1UP box. Let's get one of those. Okay, let's be honest, most of these things are the exact same, just with different names and products every month. They generally cover the same basis of cheap pop culture merchandise that we couldn't sell at Target, so we'll just pawn it off to all the subscribers of Loot Crate. Here, you try to sell it. There are some neater ones. I always like the idea of the foreign food crates, and something like the retro gaming treasure crate is more up my alley. Getting random retro games every month. Oh, sweet battle chess. But overall, the monthly subscription box model just isn't for me, especially the ones that are broadly based around nerd culture. Which is why I bought a bunch of subscription boxes from retail stores. Yeah, Loot Crate and various other companies that specialize in subscription boxes started trying to sell these gift boxes in stores. These are subscription boxes without the subscription. They don't really update them, these just sit at a Walmart as easy gift options, I assume. Well, let's take a look at Loot Crate's gaming treasures, cause nothing screams gaming treasures more so than this guy. Alright, it's an Assassin's Creed pop figure. This is the first pop figure I've ever owned. I've made it 22 years without one, and now I know the first thing I'm giving away in my will. A Borderlands mousepad, TF2 pin set, a Bioshock Infinite keychain, a copy of Ready Player One, and some Hearthstone code. I can't wait for me and only me to never use this thing. They also offer the Retro Arcade Classics box, a Sonic figure, yeah, my favorite arcade classic. Exclusive Street Fighter comic, Pac-Man glass, Galaga pin, and Tetris magnets. Alright, I'm obviously more smitten with the Retro Arcade Classics variety, but you get a hunkin' book with the other one, that's pretty cool. Yeah, but a lot of the junk with the Gaming Treasures box feels like, here's a fucking mouse pad. I'd say Retro Arcade Classics has a lot more consistent quality with all the products and neatness to it all. A Pac-Man glass, come on, that's bound to hold water. And Tetris magnets, those are pretty fun. After the NES Classic Edition took the world by storm, companies began to feel more comfortable flooding Target and Walmart with retro gaming knickknacks, and we got some gift boxes out of this. Sony's been desperately trying to be just like Nintendo by milking nostalgia lately, and boy has that been working out. The PlayStation Loot Box by Numbskull compared to the PlayStation Box by Culturefly both came out around the same time in late 2018. I love the design of these boxes. I think the Culturefly one has more useful items, the beanie, coaster set, which is probably my favorite item of the bunch. We got a notebook, fucking socks. Numbskull has more of a collectible you're never gonna use feel to a lot of the items in the box. Like, they're cool, but I'm never gonna use some of these, like pins and a spinner keychain. But this bug is solid quality, and I've never wanted to open a bottle more than I do right now. Numbskull also made an Atari one, which is sorta garbage. Compared to their PlayStation release, this one doesn't have nearly as nice presentation. While it has some products that are the same between the two, just now obviously with Atari flair, the PlayStation one has a steel mug. The Atari one has a cheap cinch bag instead. Garbage. In comparison, Culturefly whipped together this SNES box, which is pretty cool. It's actually themed around retro Nintendo systems as a whole, where we get NES game coasters, a Game Boy mug and notebook, a plush controller for some reason, an SNES backpack. There's a nice variety of stuff here, and it doesn't feel like it got ripped off with a damn cinch bag. Oh, the mystery item was an NES pin. Well, there you go, the box has been validated. Now, I think these system boxes work really well. If you're into retro gaming or Nintendo, Atari, or PlayStation specifically, I think these make for solid gift options for those kind of people. If you're just a blatant fan of any of these properties, you're bound to enjoy most of the items in each of these boxes or find some actual use out of them. But then there's the Midway Classic Arcade box by The Coop. I legitimately don't know how this made it into Target, and hey, look here, it's on clearance. The lineup of games represented in this box, I just don't see a lot of people saying, oh man, when I think Rampage, I also think Paperboy Joust and Spy Hunter. Also, opening it up, first impressions are always key, and this looks like a garbage bag. I mean, there's some cute stuff in here, but just little collectibles, nothing like a nice mug or coasters, stuff like a tiny tin lunchbox and Boingler. Well, if we want something specifically designed for specific fans of specific properties, here we have Mario and Zelda boxes by Culturefly. The Mario one is obviously aimed more towards younger fans with stuff like a mushroom lunch bag, but there's still some cute little things in here like a sticky note block. The Zelda one is legitimately cool. This coin bank is so nice looking, and we get a journal, drinking glass, rupee wallet, vinyl figure. This is legitimately really nice stuff. So yeah, I actually kind of like these gift boxes you can get in stores. I think they're pretty adequate presents for people you know are fans of certain things. The variety gift boxes and stuff like Loot Crate in general, there's too much variety in there in my opinion. There's too much wiggle room for potential. They aren't gonna like a lot of the properties represented, and so many of those things feel way more like they're working within a strict budget, where a lot of these gift boxes don't feel like that nearly as much. And a lot of these ended up cheaper than subscribing to a specific Loot Crate. Well, out of all the boxes I've swapped spit with, these ones, we've been on a pretty crazy journey these past 12 minutes, and a lot can change in such a short period of time. Just in the past 12 minutes, I've contracted something. I've been diagnosed with not giving a shit about Loot Crate. Hey y'all, Scott here. I like candles. Sue me. I should stop ending sentences with that. But I like them, they're fun, and I just bought all these from the store on clearance. They must be clearing the shelves for even more candles. And I'm sure somebody new will make them. What the hell is this? Nothing beats a homegrown video game. A game made by the developers who crafted the series in the first place. Who better to make Eco than Eco? Hey, they made the worlds, they made the characters, they should know exactly what to do. Until they don't want to anymore. Things change, mom and dad don't give a shit anymore. You don't know why, it just happens, and when my parents give up on me, 343 Industries takes custody. Many game franchises have to go through a messy divorce at one point or another, and when there's nobody to take care of them anymore, surely somebody has an open weekend. More series than you may think go through this, especially long-standing ones. A shift in developers. Whether it's a one-time thing or it's permanent, tons of beloved franchises get new developers all the time. Sometimes it's for the best, sometimes it's for the worst, and many times it's for the eh. The shift can be blatantly obvious, with the tone or feel changing drastically. Do you really think the Pac-Man World 2 developers would make Pac-Man talk? This is Blitz games all over it. But sometimes, new developers replicate the original style so well that it's nearly indistinguishable from previous entries. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was the third entry in the Tomb Raider reboot series, primarily developed by Crystal Dynamics, and while they did help with this game, it was mainly done by Eidos Montreal, and I cannot tell any differences. It looks and plays exactly how you'd expect it to, and I feel like the lesser review scores were mostly because it was the third game in the series and not much has changed. People are getting a healthy dose of I'm sick of Tomb Raider-itis. But let's hear it for Eidos Montreal, the babysitters of the Tomb Raider franchise. Montreal is the one-stop shop for sequels to games not made by the same developers. You want a new Batman Arkham game not made by the people who made the Batman Arkham games? Do I have a city for you? Warner Brothers Montreal created Batman Arkham Origins, which was made when they were trying to pump these games out every 2 years. The original developer Rocksteady was busy making Arkham Knight for next generation consoles, so throw it to the B team. If any Canadian territory could do it, I guess this one. But yeah, you can kind of tell this wasn't done by the same people as the others. It's not bad, but the quality definitely isn't as high as the Rocksteady titles. It definitely feels like more filler than a true new Arkham game. They don't even include this one in recent collections to the Wii U. But what if the new developers do a better job than the original ones? What if they best them in nearly every way? That's rich. Oh, it can happen, no doubt, but most of the time when a new developer takes over, it's not really because they show more promise than the original devs. It's not because they have better ideas or are more capable of developing the franchises. More often than not, it's because the corporation that owns the series wants it to continue with more games, but the original team wants absolutely nothing to do with that anymore, so you know what that means. I've always wanted to go to Montreal. I usually don't think about it that much. When I hear a new team is taking over development of a series, I don't immediately jump to that being a bad sign or anything. But yeah, looking back at a lot of these, the last thing I would want is my child being raised by Capcom Vancouver. Hi, Scott Wozniak, Smear Campaign enthusiast. I love dragging developers through the mud. In fact, I hate developers, each and every one of them, especially if they try to make a Sly Cooper game. That's why I need to weed out which ones are bad and which ones are really bad. We're going to be taking a look at a few game franchises that switched developers at one point or another and see what changed in the transition and if adoption is really the best solution to all problems. First up, let's discuss Microsoft is one of the shining examples of changing developers of their IPs, mainly because the original teams kept leaving. Bungie created the Halo series. Halo is literally the Xbox game, and because of that, when Halo 3 was positioned as the finale with the tagline "Finish the Fight," Microsoft promptly pissed themselves for 5 years straight. Bungie developed a few prequels after 3, but when Halo Reach released, they were donezo. Microsoft then decided to form a studio that's primary purpose was to just continue the Halo series, and they just couldn't stop finishing the fight. 343 Industries isn't a bad studio, far from it. I mean, Halo 4 and 5 look spectacular, but fans just don't feel like this is Halo anymore. 343 isn't a studio making these games because they want to continue the series, they're doing it because Microsoft is telling them to. It's a similar situation with Gears of War. With the original developer Epic Games moving on, Microsoft decided to structure a studio that was hell-bent on continuing the Gears of War franchise. And while Gears of War 4 and Gears 5, that's the full name, good use of words, are solid titles, they just feel unnecessary. It doesn't help that a lot of people blew their Gears of War load on the 360 with 4 games. They kinda got sick of it. And similarly to Halo, the franchise's name just doesn't hold the same value anymore. Halo and Gears of War are kinda continuing for the sake of continuing. The original developers were done with them long ago, and Microsoft keeps them afloat because you can't have an Xbox without... And then Crackdown changed developers every time. This is a great sign. Real-Time Worlds to Ruffian Games to Sumo Digital. Now, some team members transitioned over from developer to developer, but let's be honest, the Crackdown series just got worse with every game. Sumo Digital's a pretty good studio, but they're kind of the babysitter of the series developers don't want to make anymore. They worked on Little Big Planet 3, while the original team at Media Molecule was hard at work on Dreams. It took 7 years to come out, so I think that was a fair decision to have another studio work on Little Big Planet. And in my opinion, Sumo did a pretty decent job with 3. It felt like Little Big Planet, bad platforming and all. But what killed the game was the technical problems. So many bugs and glitches and long loading times. It pretty much killed this game right out the gate. And while this is a competent experience, it was bogged down by a lack of testing. I'm sure if Sumo Digital had more time with the game, they would have been able to prove themselves worthy of the franchise. But I think the launch tainted their image. Many fans consider this to be the death of the series. But see, Little Big Planet 3 was a game I knew people weren't too hot on. On the contrary, do you ever just assume some games are enjoyed by a fan base and then use this? Oh my god. We got the Sly Cooper trilogy on PlayStation 2, a beloved set of stealth platformers developed by Sucker Punch. Now, I have no nostalgia for these titles as I was too invested in at the time, but I have dabbled in them since, and these are wonderful games full of style and life. It's a shame they fell victim to the great PlayStation curse. You make around 3 entries, get out. Most of the time, this is due to the original developers themselves wanting to move on, and in this instance, Sucker Punch began working on the Infamous series. However, hints of a new Sly Cooper game consistently appeared, even in Infamous itself. That was because somebody was willing to work on Sly 4 instead. That's right, the Mystery Case Files of the Malgrave Incident guys, Sanzaru Games. They're perfect! They pitched a Sly Cooper 4 to Sony back in 2008. Sony then tested the waters by letting them remaster the originals for PS3, and soon they handed over the keys to the franchise for 2013 Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. It was okay. As somebody who's not a mega fan of Sly Cooper, it's difficult for me to truly go, oh yeah, this is way better than this. Like, I've seen a fair amount of people who weren't diehard fans of Mario Party say Super Mario Party was the best game in the series. The f did they just say? It can be difficult to judge the quality of a recent entry in a series if you weren't too exposed to the previous ones, and I feel that a bit with Thieves in Time. But from what I've gathered researching fans' opinions on this entry, the characters and style were tweaked a bit too much for many's liking. The story continued on from 3 with them going, oh, Sly retired from thievery, that was a joke. But overall, it didn't necessarily feel like they were pushing the series forward, rather they just kind of took what Sucker Punch did and tried to do it again. And even though Sanzaru has made some quality titles, they aren't nearly as talented as Sucker Punch. I think that's very fair to say. From what I've played, this is totally fine, but the general consensus is the originals on PS2 are obviously superior, with Thieves in Time being a decent, albeit unnecessary return to form. We got another series that disappeared for a while just to end up anti-disappearing with a new father in tow, Luigi's Mansion, one of the better compliments you could give somebody. A launch title for the GameCube, its primary function was to show off just how graphically impressive a Luigi's Mansion could be. So much dust and lighting effects. It was a very short game and the gameplay wasn't anything crazy, but it was a fun little romp regardless. However, this game has a huge fan base, people who love everything about it to death. This little game had so much character, whether we're talking Luigi, Professor Egad, the ghost, or the mansion itself. It was an incredibly charming and memorable experience. But it also had this light sense of uneasiness. It was still a family-friendly game in the Mario universe, but it was just eerie enough to have that perfect amount of spookiness to it all. It was developed internally at Nintendo, the EAD division, most known for developing the Nintendo games you actually care about. But when a sequel released 12 years later for the Nintendo 3DS, Next Level Games were in charge this time around and results were somewhat different. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon featured a new art style for the environments and original characters, which was much more angular and exaggerated, which I think is fine. It gives it a 1950s retro haunted house feel, but it's not nearly as atmospheric, and it always felt odd to me that they didn't tweak the designs of Luigi or Egad to fit more with the rest of the art style. The ghosts in the original look like dead Mario characters. They look like they were designed by the same people who designed Luigi, but here in Dark Moon, they don't even look like they belong alongside the boos in the game, the main ghosts we see in the Mario series. And with the game being on a handheld, they felt the need to alter how the game was set up. Now, there are multiple mansions and you have missions to complete, which makes the game more suitable to just pick up and play. Now, I don't really blame Next Level for this decision, but it's not the most ideal setup for Luigi's Mansion. However, they came back with Luigi's Mansion 3, and this is an improvement. Sure, the art style is still a bit mismatched with the regular Mario designs, but 3 makes up for it with absolutely gorgeous lighting and animations, phenomenal puzzles, and a setup closer to the original, albeit not the same, but that's totally fine. It's a sequel, it's supposed to be a bit different. I feel like the gameplay is far more engaging and well thought out than the original, but that one had far better atmosphere and is overall a more memorable and replayable experience. But hey, with 3, I do think Next Level Games has proven themselves worthy of the franchise. I think both 1 and 3 stand on their own as equally good titles. 1 does some things better than 3, and vice versa. Dark Moon wasn't as good. A game not being on par with the original? That reminds me, Dead Rising! Dead Rising was all about surviving a zombie-infested mall for 72 hours, helping civilians and mauling psychopaths, and at your disposal is all of the above. The game's primary claim to fame was the idea that if you can pick it up, you can use it as a weapon. Couple that with how cheesy the dialogue and characters were while the story took itself as seriously as possible, we have ourselves a winner. The first title was developed internally at Capcom, and it didn't take long for them to give up. Dead Rising 2 was developed by Blue Castle Studios, and Capcom dug their work so much they bought them, and with that, Capcom Vancouver was born just to die. Dead Rising 3 was an Xbox One launch title, and finally we had Dead Rising 4 before death. Well, I've only played Dead Rising 1 and 4, and my opinion is, oh god, 1 is better. 4 is obviously technically superior, it looks really nice, controls fine, there's so much on screen at once, it's pretty impressive. But it doesn't feel like we have as many options in terms of weapons like in the first game. It felt like literally everything could be used. Here it just feels like any average game. I can't pick up any of this, just whatever the game decides is convenient for me to pick up at that given moment. Also, the big thing 4 advertised was the return of Frank West, the protagonist from the first game. Except this character isn't Frank West. He has the same name, he kinda looks like him, but the writing here is so much more self-aware and makes him out to be a wisecracking ass. The original Frank West was pretty serious, which made it more funny when the player decided, oh, let me be stupid. The serious story perfectly contrasted with the ridiculous weapons and cheesy dialogue, and they make things way too jokey in 4, and it just feels forced. But Dead Rising 4 is a decent enough game, I just think it isn't a great Dead Rising game. I don't really think the developers understood what people liked about it. It just kind of felt like they heard that people liked Frank West, but didn't know why people liked him. However, it's a fine overall game. But it doesn't compare to, oh Jesus God no. Mario Party's like people with skin, it's fucking everywhere. The original party game. Get your friends together, traverse a giant board, and play a minigame at the end of each turn. Collect coins to purchase stars, and whoever has the most stars at the end wins. It was a simple concept, but it made for a phenomenal multiplayer experience. So much bullshit happens, it's magical. However, that bullshit is balanced out with pure strategy, deciding the right time to spend your coins or which direction to move on the board, trying to win the most minigames. It all evens out to an experience that does require some strategy, but is luck-oriented enough to be interesting and hilarious. Hudson Soft was the developer, and they kept at it for 8 whole games on home consoles alongside 2 on handhelds. And they released a new one nearly every year from 1998 to 2007, and then nothing. After 3 Nintendo 64, 4 GameCube, and 1 Wii game, the series stopped, which really puzzled me. Mario Party 8 sold insanely well, and for them to only make 1 entry on the console was absurd. The Wii was practically made for Mario Party, and they only made 1? Well, the hiatus ended up being due to Hudson Soft going through some changes. Konami ended up turning them into a subsidiary before just dissolving the company entirely. They're just Konami now, and because of that, Mario Party's future was uncertain for a while. Really, Hudson was the only one to develop the games. Sure, Indie Zero developed the card game Mario Party E, and Capcom did some arcade games, but the B did the heavy lifting. But then, Nintendo had a great idea. Let's f*** up. This'll be great. Let's have the company who developed Wii Party do Mario Party from now on. From great, I mean fucking putrid. Mario Party returned with Mario Party 9 on the Wii in 2012, developed by ND Cube, and it just wasn't Mario Party. Everybody was in a car now. That's
tears it.
Whatever you rolled would move the car for everybody. You were collecting mini-stars. Minigames just happened randomly when you'd land on a certain space. It felt like they were listening to reviews that were just really tired of Mario Party by then. I mean, I would be too if I had to review these games every single year. Most of them read like, 8 Mario Parties. This is getting stale and repetitive. ND Cube went, alright, let's do something different and worse. This style tried to simplify Mario Party, but ended up unnecessarily complicating it all. I think the original setup was far more immediately understandable. It's a board game. You all roll and move individually. Here, what the hell kind of board game do you all move together in a car? Because everybody moves together, you can't really strategize where you want to go because where you end up is dependent on what the last person rolled. And the boards themselves had a definitive beginning and end. They were completely linear, and all you wanted to do was roll enough spaces to get to the finish line, which just isn't that fun. I liked exploring the boards in the original games, making it to an item shop before friends did, strategically waiting around a certain area. This just feels like the goal is to get the game over with. At least the minigames were fine. That's the saving grace of every Mario Party. I don't think a single one has nothing but garbage minigames. They're all fairly alright. Thankfully, with their next entry, Mario Party Island Tour on the 3DS, they went back to everybody moving separately, but the game boards were still start to finish linear experiences. Definitely better than 9 style, but god, this isn't great. Everything's just overly simple and bland. But at least with Mario Party 10, they had a chance to redeem themselves. It's the fucking car again! They brought back the car from 9, and it really has not been improved at all. 10 is just another 9, which just makes it worse in my opinion. They could have improved things, but no, it's the same! There is a special mode called Bowser Party, which allows one player to be Bowser on the Wii U gamepad, where they're actively trying to hunt down the others and beat them. But this mode only has like 10 minigames to play, which gets old quick. Mario Party Star Rush on the 3DS was next. What the hell is this? Alright, so Star Rush is very different. You all roll simultaneously, which saves just so much time. That's the big selling point of the game. It's the Mario Party for the working man. Don't have any free time? Here's Star Rush. It's definitely the most unique one of the bunch, but really doesn't feel like Mario Party to me. So the next year, they made another 3DS game, this one being the Top 100, a collection of the best 100 minigames from the series past. This was a phenomenal idea. Why did they put this on 3DS? This game celebrates the home console history of the series. They have pretty much no representation of the handheld entries. I'd rather play Mario Party on a home console. I don't want to round up 3DS owners to play this. On top of that, this is literally just the minigames. The way ND Cube wanted you to play this is to just pick a minigame, play it, and move on with your day. Nobody wants to play just minigames. You need boards to hold that experience all together, and this game has one board. And it just reuses assets from Star Rush. Thankfully, Super Mario Party came out for the Nintendo Switch, and is a step in the right direction. It goes back to the standard formula of the original games, but there's only 4 boards, and they all stink! They're all really tiny, and are based on a grid, which makes them super bland. I mean, they're doing better than they have before, but I never trust a man who prefers Super to 6. The thing is, though, most of these were negative changes, developers that didn't really know how to recapture the magic of the original games. But just take a look at these. Sonic Mania, fans from 3 different studios coming together to make a 2D Sonic game even better than the originals. And Metroid Prime, Retro Studios bringing the series into 3D in one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, and bringing Donkey Kong Country back. The original 3 were great, but the 2 Retro made are some of the greatest platformers of all time. Yoshi's Woolly World, I'd say, is on par with Yoshi's Island. And then they follow that up with this. But the point is, even then, sometimes new people can bring new ideas. They can be more knowledgeable about where a series should go, more so than the people who actually created it. But damn it, that isn't the case with Candles. Hey all, Scott here. I am not doing well. It's been a week since Daylight Savings Day. Worst holiday. I've changed my clocks. I'm still not used to it. I hate change. I've had the same feet for years, thank you. I don't want to change, and I'm gonna stick to doing what I do best. Playing games that released in 2018 on the PS3. The next generation of gaming is upon us. It's time to upgrade. No! No! Yeah, upgrading can be scary. I just consider myself a big fetus with hair. See, some people are perfectly content with what they already have. They don't need to constantly buy new toys to feel excitement. They can just keep playing with their mud and grass while I buy my 4th new iPhone this month. They may be fiscally responsible, but who's having the real fun here? But when a new video game console launches, there's always those few games that make anybody go, I want it. I want the brand new console with the new controller in this game and a compliment. maybe not the compliment. Buying new game consoles the second they come out is always expensive. You don't really get the early adopter discount most of the time. You pay more to experience something first, but we live in an age where the second after a fancy new product is released, it's immediately outdated. If you wait around for it to get cheaper, the next new thing will come out to replace it. Then you'll wait for that to get cheaper, and it happens all over again. We're in an endless loop of spending too much money. So, yeah, I don't care about that fancy new console. I'll stick to my old one. It doesn't matter anyways, because all those new games coming out, yeah, they may be releasing for the new generation, but they're also releasing on the last one. Poverty wins again. These are cross-generation games that release not only for the current generation consoles, but the last generation consoles as well. Xbox One games also releasing on Xbox 360, PlayStation 4 games also releasing on PlayStation 3. And 2. But see, these downgraded versions can either be undeniably impressive or flat out terrifying. Sometimes they take a lot away from the big boy current gen versions since they have to create those games with the previous generation in mind. They can't go hog wild with the PS4 game because, remember, they're making a PS3 game too. Though sometimes the last gen version is made first and then a current gen version is created based off of that build. I think this is the most resourceful way to go about it. But of course, most of the time they just take the current generation version and cheese grate the out of it to fit on older consoles. Come on, video game industry, listen to me, white kid chair sits. So what defines a cross-generation game? Well, to me, I'm considering to be games that release on 2 or more generations of game consoles around the same time. It can be on the same day or within the first few months. This has been a standard for a while now. Back in the NES days, some games released between that and the SNES and Sega Genesis. But the NES version of a game was almost always completely different from the SNES version. Spot the difference. However, Nintendo themselves did a few cross-gen games, releasing on both systems. All puzzle games. Tetris 2, Yoshi's Cookie, Wario's Woods, these made their way to multiple consoles because NES users were worried they would have to buy a Super Nintendo just for Wario's Woods. Puzzle games aren't too graphically intensive and pretty simple overall, so putting them on the NES just made sense. Might as well support the system a couple seconds longer. It was usually the simplest games that made their way over to past consoles back then, like Frogger. The PS1 game came out, and right alongside it were versions for the Genesis and SNES. These were 100% not the same games. But see, the cross-generation games I like are the ones where the platform list is a nutritional facts label. It just keeps going and I just accept it. Games that appear on this many platforms are usually of the licensed kids game variety. One of the most notorious examples, Donald Duck Goin' Quackers. God, that game. 8 platforms. Now, to be fair, some versions came out 2 years after the others, and 2 of these are handheld variants for the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. But just the fact this game swaps spit with nearly every console from one generation, and then the next one as well, is just straight up impressive. This has always been my standard. Normally for the first few years of a console, some games will come out for the previous generation as well. That's to be expected, but when the shift from the 6th generation to the 7th generation was happening, game companies didn't know when to pump the brakes. The Rat-Tat-Tooie video game. 11 different versions. Thank God, 2 people were scared they couldn't play. This game released on every major system from the 6th generation and every major system for the 7th generation, and really, they didn't have to. I think the original Xbox version was nearly canned, but GameStop nabbed it as a store exclusive. Well, now you gotta go. Licensed kids games in the mid to late 2000s were on as many platforms as it could possibly be on, and that's something we just don't see nearly as much nowadays. It's probably because back then the PlayStation 2 was still going strong. It was the most popular console of all time, and with the Nintendo Wii releasing to enormous success and having a similar power level, it just made sense to still produce versions of Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 games for this lower level of hardware. And at that point, you might as well puke out something for the GameCube. So many game consoles were a thing at the time, and nearly all of them had good reasons for developers to want to release on them. The Xbox 360, the most popular HD system at the time. The PlayStation 3, not as popular and harder to develop for, but there was still an install base, and it had comparable specs to the 360, so might as well put your game out on that. The Wii, now far less powerful than the 360 and PS3, but it had the biggest install base out of all of them. The PS2 was still selling and still had active users, and could run games made for the Wii pretty well, but why not make a last-gen version of the title? There's still an active audience for that. And hey, the PlayStation Portable is sort of a portable PlayStation 2. It shouldn't be too hard to squirt that version on there. And at that point, I mean, might as well do a GameCube and Xbox version. A lot of users on these older consoles were kids. They can't immediately upgrade to the new systems whenever they want, so if you're making a kids game, making versions for these consoles, it just made sense. PC and Mac versions too, why not? Oh, and Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS games. They'll be completely different, but it makes the list funnier. It's all about making your game as accessible as possible. No matter what console somebody has, they should have the audacity to play your game. And one of the oddest examples of this initiative were the Burger King games on Xbox and Xbox 360. There was a promotion for a while where you could get these exclusive games at Burger King. They play on both Xbox and Xbox 360. You'd think that means, oh, these were just made for the original Xbox, and then the Xbox 360 could play the original Xbox games. The 360 can in fact play a good chunk of original Xbox games. No, there is a separate original Xbox version of these games and an Xbox 360 version on the same disc. It changes based on what you use it on, just like Bengay. Cross-generation games were just different back then. There were so many different active consoles running all at the same time that it just made sense to put cars on everything. Except the PS3. PS3 owners, just admit it, you f***ed up, but there was a game that changed cross-generation games forever. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, released as a launch title for the Wii and 1 month later on the GameCube. See, Twilight Princess was initially revealed as just a GameCube game, but as time went on, its completion date lined up perfectly with the launch of Nintendo's next home console. Uh-oh! So why not prioritize a version for that console and have this big sweaty launch title alongside it? It was the same game across both consoles. I mean, the Wii was pretty much a GameCube on Adderall. It was more powerful, but is a rock really better than a big stone? Twilight Princess on Wii is in widescreen, which is nice, though so much of the screen real estate is blocked by a giant Wii Remote diagram, so it's sort of a half upgrade. You have forced motion controls in this version. Of course, it was the Wii and a launch title at that. They wanted to show off how the Wii Remote could be a sword. They could have let you plug in a GameCube controller to control it just like the GameCube version, but of course, they wanted Wii users to be Wii users. Now, you'd think with the GameCube and Wii being so similar power-wise that these would be pretty identical versions outside of controls and the aspect ratio. Well, consider that most of the population is right-handed. Link has prominently been left-handed in Zelda games up to this point. Swinging the Wii Remote with your right hand when Link attacks with his left would feel funny. So they decided to make Link right-handed in the Wii version. That was obviously done by just changing Link's model, right? Ah. It says no. The Wii version of Twilight Princess is mirrored. The entire game is flipped compared to the GameCube version. I mean, when the Wii version of this game was announced, did anybody say, yeah, I hope it's flipped? In all honesty, it's kind of cool they did that. It gives each version distinction while not necessarily taking away from either one. Cross-gen releases were always frequent, but Twilight Princess was one of the first big AAA titles to do so. A game you'd legitimately buy a new console for, releasing on an old one around the same time. This became a huge trend starting with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So many games released on those consoles in addition to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The difference was, there was quite a big leap in terms of power. Can PS4 games run on the PS3? Sure. Destiny, Far Cry 4, Dragon Age Inquisition, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, Assassin's Creed 4, Thief, Call of Duty Ghosts, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zero, Battlefield 4, Need for Speed Rivals, Murdered Soul Suspect, Alien Isolation, Evil Within, Dragon Ball Xenoverse, Resident Evil Revelations 2, Battlefield Hardline, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, all released on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. To be honest, many of these games worked on these platforms. Here I have Wolfenstein: The New Order for Xbox 360, coming on a whopping 4 discs. One of them we pop in just to install the game onto the hard drive. That's how you can tell if the game really wasn't made for the 360, when you have to install it. This is normal, this is normal, this is normal. Playing the game, I mean, it works, everything's all here, though when it switches from the super high quality cutscenes to the actual gameplay, it's so much more noticeable than on PS4. It doesn't look too bad, but it obviously doesn't look the greatest either. But if you only had an Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 and wanted to play this game, it's not a bad option. I did get stuck on nothing here though, and then my bullets were suspended in the air. I could shoot them though, so false alarm. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain was such an odd game to be cross-gen. It released in late 2015, and being such a huge graphical showcase, you'd think they'd want to keep it on PS4 and Xbox One, but nope, 360 and PS3 versions with a mandatory install, thank you very much. This was probably released on last-gen platforms due to the first part of the MGS5 experience releasing on them as well, Ground Zeroes. At least that released in early 2014, only a few months into the new console's lives, so it felt more warranted. Jesus, you can tell this was not made for these consoles. Just how pixelated everything can be. It still looks alright, though you can tell this game is not the most comfortable in this environment. And there's Watch Dogs. Oh, Watch Dogs. A game initially revealed as the showcase title for the next generation. A game that couldn't be done on the current platforms. An experience you'd have to buy a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One for. But it also runs on soap. 2 discs and 1 installation later, bam, it's Watch Dogs as God intended. Mediocre. Most of these 360 versions run fine enough. I mean, they're not as good as the next gen alternatives, but if you really wanted to play these games and this was your only option, definitely serviceable. It's just odd seeing some games go the cross-gen route, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. Could a game like this run on the 360? No problem. Look at these clouds. Titanfall was a game that actually got people interested in the Xbox One initially. And it also came to Xbox 360 a month later. Well, that deflates a lot of excitement. Even when the game is coming to Xbox One, just knowing a 360 version existed, well, nice for 360 users, it kind of made you think, like, is this game gonna be a compromised experience on Xbox One because they had to consider the fact it was coming to 360 as well? The crew came to PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox 360, not the PS3. I just thought that was kind of funny. Call of Duty Black Ops 3 made its way to the last generation consoles. Multiplayer only. These things are a stand-up routine. Laugh. Persona 5 released on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 in 2017, which is insane. I mean, many times games release on older platforms like that due to kept promises. This was an era of long development and crowdfunding, so when game projects were proposed and took years to actually come out, and a 360 version was promised when the 360 was actually alive, so developers promised a 360 version of Mighty Number 9, you bet your ass they kept that promise. They made Mighty Number 9. Though as time went on, many games that were planned to appear on previous generations just end up not working out. Either they figured the amount of effort it would take to port their game over wouldn't be worth it based on the current install bases, the game was just too intense to run well, or they just didn't feel like it anymore. Mortal Kombat X, Mad Max, Dying Light, Shantae, Half Genie Hero, last gen versions were planned but ended up being cancelled. But Little Big Planet 3 released on PS3. Why? It's not like Sony was doing a ton of PS3 games releasing right alongside PS4 versions. Like, there were so many PS3 games released the year of the PS4. They could have put Gran Turismo 6 on the PS4, Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus, Puppeteer, Slife Thieves in Time, God of War Ascension. No! Little Big Planet 3! That's the only one that needs to be on both. Hey, they did us a favor. The PS3 wouldn't be the PS3 without Little Big Planet 3 in 2014. So these are all sort of neat. They exist. It's kind of fun. They all run and look worse than their next-gen counterparts. No fucking way. But it's sort of cool to see these games I know of as PS4 titles running on hardware released in 2005. But sometimes, developers go a different route and decide to make exclusive versions of games to run on old systems. I believe this is referred to as stupid. These are sort of cross-gen. I mean, they are and they aren't. Exclusive versions of games for the previous generation. Interesting tactic. And I think Ubisoft takes the cake here for most effort put into a dog shit idea. It's 2014 and Assassin's Creed Unity is releasing for PS4, Xbox One, and PC, and PS4, Xbox One, and PC only. I gotta say, I'm pretty surprised Ubisoft was that quick to make Assassin's Creed a current gen only game. The last entry, Black Flag, was on everything because it was a launch title for the new consoles, and the next year, bam! Only for the new consoles. But that was because they created an exclusive Assassin's Creed game for the previous gen, Assassin's Creed Rogue, released on the same day as Unity. These are two separate games you need two separate generations of hardware to experience. They did this as an experiment. It was hard for publishers to give up support on this generation because it lasted a lifetime and these systems had huge install bases. They were worried that loads of players were still on 360 and PS3 and would either miss out on the latest Assassin's Creed or wouldn't buy a watered down port. How about an exclusive one just for them? See if there's a reason to keep both of these platforms around. I don't know. This was well into the Assassin's Creed fatigue. People were already getting tired of a new game every year, so what does Ubisoft do? Release two Assassin's Creeds on the same day. God, I'm so fucking sick of peanut butter, I wish I had two jars instead of one. I just view this as a waste of development. The team that made this could have made anything but Assassin's Creed for either current or previous gen systems, but no. They had to make another game and a series milked dry on consoles nobody cared about anymore. A similar situation happened with Call of Duty when World at War released for Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii, a separate version released on the PlayStation 2, World at War Final Fronts. A completely separate game. I still don't understand the point of this. Obviously, World at War would have worked on the PS2. It worked on the Wii, so what was the big deal? This was probably them testing the waters, just like with Assassin's Creed Rogue, see if the PS2 audience still cared about new exclusive games in 2008. But still, at that point, why not put Final Fronts on the Wii as well, or port it to the PSP? They put all this development time into a version that just released on the PlayStation 2. Sonic Unleashed on the Wii and PS2 released alongside the 360 and PS3 versions. They are completely different games. They follow roughly the same plot and structure, but the levels are all different, so it's like, is this a cross-gen game or just straight up different entities? Sonic the Hedgehog released on the Sega Master System and Sega Genesis. What is this? Again, two completely different games. Is this cross-gen? One of my favorite weird examples is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Much like the mainline Pokemon games, the first game was released as two separate versions, Blue Rescue Team and Red Rescue Team. Both on different consoles on the same day. Blue was on the Nintendo DS, Red was on the Game Boy Advance. How many people went, I can and I can also with that? I think that's confusing if anything. Cross-gen games became more and more common as the years went on. They were mostly reserved for the kids' games, but lately, look at this. So many games releasing on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and the fourth generation of Xbox consoles. It's becoming commonplace for big AAA games to release across generations like this. One of the greatest games of the generation is debatable whether it's a part of this generation or not, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This was almost an exact repeat of of the Twilight Princess situation. The game was announced for Wii U, got delayed so many times, its completion date lined up with the Nintendo Switch's release. Oh god, they didn't mean to! It made for one hell of a launch title and swan song for the Wii U. I mean, the reason for this game being cross-gen wasn't necessarily to give it the biggest install base possible, rather, it was out of obligation. They announced they were working on Zelda for Wii U all the way back in 2013. People bought Wii U's just for this game. They had to release it for the system. And it works. There's really not any cool differences between versions like there was with Twilight Princess on the GameCube and Wii. It's sorta neat to see the Wii U gamepad show up in the menus instead of Switch controllers. You can play the game directly on the gamepad, though the original plan was to have the map always down there. That would have been a cool feature exclusive to the Wii U version, but that was scrapped. Both releases look nearly identical. From my experience, the Switch version seems to look and run a bit better, but they're pretty much the same. It's probably a lot of shiny new device bias. Of course the Switch version looks better. Don't tell me I wasted $300. Well, technically, in some ways, the Wii U version actually loads faster. Again, not by much though. But when we hit the home button and then go back to the game, it needs to reload on Wii U. We also have to install a ton of data, so while the Wii U may have been the original platform for the game, it was definitely pretty optimized for the Switch. Yeah, it's a lot of work to put your game on multiple platforms. I should know. I've played Bubble Bobble. I know everything about video games, but that doesn't stop some franchises from going on every platform conceivable. For example, the Lego games. You can always count on these being something you call an exterminator for. Just Dance. Yep, multiple entries released on the Nintendo Switch, the Wii U, and the Wii all at the same time, in addition to Xbox 360 and PS3 releases. And then Just Dance 2020 released on just the current platforms and the Wii. To be fair, it made sense not to make a Wii U version. I mean, you can play the Wii game through the Wii U. It's not like you'd be missing out that year. And of course, we can't forget, where's the Wii U version? The sports games. FIFA 2005 ended up being released on the PlayStation 1 in 2004. FIFA 19 released for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in 2018. But this one was the Legacy Edition, which many EA didn't care, and this is just FIFA 17 or something with an updated player roster. But then FIFA 14 in 2013 released for the PS2. Same Legacy Edition tactic of an older FIFA game re-released, but this game came out for the PS3 and PS4, as well as the PSP and PS Vita. The Wii? Not the Wii U though, this is ridiculous. But look at how many versions existed. That's almost as crazy as... No, this is pretty sane. Sports games have sort of settled down in terms of platforms supported. Madden barely goes outside of the PlayStation and Xbox consoles anymore and jumped out of the previous generation decently quickly. Persona 5 came out for the PS3 more recently than Madden did. The Madden of the new generation. Cross-generation games are undoubtedly good for the consumer, not forcing everybody to spend hundreds of dollars on a new system to play a game that can technically work perfectly fine on the console they already have. But I'd be lying if I said their existence didn't make things less exciting when a new generation comes along. Why should I care? I can play this game on a fucking tree trunk. What's there to be excited about? I think it just goes to show that the games are truly what matters here. You shouldn't buy a new console just because it's the new console. You should buy it because there are meaningful experiences to have on there. If the games on that platform are already available on the platform you already have, you don't need the new console. But Sackboy has a 5 on the box now. I said don't buy the console, you can buy the games. Hey y'all, Scott here, and before you ask, honestly, what does it look like I'm doing? Some consoles live through so much, whether that be living through future console generations or getting pounded by a hammer. Consoles generally have a lifespan of 5 or so years, but some consoles last well beyond that. Some can last a decade and beyond, which is insane. So here are just a few consoles that just refused to die and lived on regardless of their age or getting pummeled to death. The Sega Dreamcast is infamous for being Sega's last hurrah as a dedicated console manufacturer. It released in Japan on November 27, 1998 and was officially discontinued on March 31, 2001. So how did it refuse to die? Well, games are still being made for the thing. The Dreamcast is incredibly easy to make games for. You can make games on standard CD-ROMs, no proprietary junk, so homebrew software has been steadily coming out for the platform since it was discontinued. Some of the more prolific releases in recent years include Volgar the Viking and Pure Solar. These aren't officially licensed by Sega, but it's still impressive that the Dreamcast has been kept half alive by fans for this long. In terms of the last officially licensed game released on the platform, Karos is the game you're looking for, released on March 8, 2007, only in Japan. For a console discontinued in 2001, that's pretty wacky. Sega's 8-bit Master System did okay at best here in North America, but absolutely dominated in PAL regions, especially Brazil. The company Tectoy reached an agreement with Sega to distribute their consoles in Brazil. This allowed the consoles to maintain a cheaper price point compared to the other systems. While the Master System was discontinued in North America by Sega in 1992 after 6 years of availability, the Sega Master System technically has yet to officially be discontinued, as it continues to sell around 100,000 units or so each year in Brazil alone. The Master System has been available to purchase for 30 plus years. In addition to that, the Genesis is in a similar boat. Released in 1988, Sega stopped all first-party manufacturing of the system in 97. However, since then, third parties have obtained the license to continually produce Genesis systems to this very day. Tectoy has the license to release the console in Brazil just like the Master System, and here in North America, At Games releases Genesis plug-and-play systems, preloaded with a multitude of games and also accepts the original cartridges. These systems, however, aren't the greatest. The preloaded games have a plethora of emulation problems, and even playing the original cartridges have some issues. But that's a story for another day. One of the most well-known long-lasting consoles, the PlayStation 2, basically lived through the PlayStation 3's lifespan. Released in 2000, the console lasted 13 years before being discontinued and receiving its last game in 2013. Why did it last so long? Well, it always held its title of being a pretty good DVD player. Also, it had a huge install base, so developers kept making games for it. This was probably due to the Wii and PSP having comparable hardware, so it made sense to make games for what was at the time last generation hardware. The mighty Neo Geo. Some know it as a home to some of the greatest arcade games known to man, others know it as the garbage clogging up the Nintendo Switch eShop. Neo Geo arcade cabinets housed multiple games made by SNK, and for those who wanted to play these games at home, the Neo Geo AES was for them. Back in the 90s, home console ports of arcade games were always known to be not as good as the originals. With the Neo Geo AES, the games released for the console were literally the arcade originals. They didn't have to squeeze them onto a small cartridge, they basically sold huge cartridges with the arcade boards in them. But the authenticity of arcade games at home came at a hefty price of being $650. However, the system lasted pretty long for being such a niche item. Originally released in 1991, the AES was discontinued in 97, which is a decent lifespan, but it received its last game in 2004, and finally SNK ended technical support for the system in 2007. Two of the most popular consoles of all time, the NES and SNES, both had pretty lengthy lifespans. Here in North America, the NES debuted in 1985 and was officially discontinued in 1995, lasting 10 years, while the SNES launched in 91 and was discontinued in 99. But as I said, that's only for North America. The Japanese equivalents to these consoles, the Famicom and Super Famicom, had even longer lives. The Famicom debuted in 1983, was discontinued in 2003, and officially had technical support dropped in 2007 due to a waning supply of parts. The Famicom was on shelves for 20 years. The Super Famicom debuted in 1990, also lasted until 2003 and ended technical support in 2007, but the Famicom lasting that long is way more impressive. The Sega Pico is the often forgotten baby's first Genesis. It's basically an educational game system for young children with insides similar to a Sega Genesis. Cartridges are these book things, and the system knows when you turn the page. You also have this pen for controls, and honestly for the early 90s, the Pico is pretty cool and definitely impressive for just an educational game console. However, it did okay at best for a game system, moving around 4 million units in total. For being such an obscure system from the past, it lasted from 1993 to 2005. That's pretty crazy for a system that barely anybody remembers and didn't do insanely well. The 7th generation of video game consoles is crazy. All three of these systems are still receiving new game releases to this very day, more than 10 years after they all initially released. Even the Wii is continually receiving Just Dance titles. Remember the first few years of the Xbox One and PS4 when each multi-platform release would see a last-gen version as well? Now PS3 and 360 releases are almost exclusively sports games and Just Dance. All these consoles have been discontinued, but games are still released every year, which may continue a bit longer. Single-handedly ushering video games into the pop culture and quickly later destroying all of their value, the Atari 2600 is one of history's most iconic game consoles. Released in 1977, the 2600 gained loads of traction and popularity, but after the market became oversaturated with poor games and competing game consoles, the video game crash of 1983 came about. However, the 2600 sold well enough for it to stay in production until January 1st, 1992, withstanding 14.5 years at retail. I find this so impressive because it was one of the factors of the crash, yet it lived well into the 16-bit generation. That's nuts! Alright, so you know what they say, if you can survive the first 13 years of your life, you can survive just about anything. So let's see if not only could this sucker survive a long retail life, but also, you know, a pummeling. No. How am I gonna play Madden now? Revenue, assets, negligence, debt, profit. Team, it's been another incredible year here at Business Productions, which means half of you are fired. We're disposable for a reason, sir. Like napkins. Now that half of our workforce has been eliminated, you know what that means. It never gets easier. We can finally afford this informational video on how companies make money.
Hey y'all, Scott here. Quick, don't fire half your staff.
Instead, consider releasing a game titled Madden 54. You'll be competition free for the next 30 years. I'm a creature of habit. Every year I do the same thing. I wake up, I say it, I buy Assassin's Creed. I wake up, I say it, I buy Assassin's Creed. I wake up, I say it, I buy Assassin's Creed. I wake up and say it, I buy Assassin's Creed. The simulation has crumbled. Some video game franchises release a brand new entry every single year. And why is that? Well, it's better than a calendar. Oh, it's March. In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Wait, let me change that. You know, it's somewhat comforting knowing you can always expect the same deal each and every year. God knows I can't medically. But oftentimes, less is more. When you have to wait a bit longer, it makes a release feel a hell of a lot more special. Plus, more time for the creators to work on it. It's a win-win. Lowe's. A corporation needs consistent revenue growth the same time every year. What are they gonna do? Oh God, I don't know. Wait. A new deck of sports every year. Hey, what's that? Annual releases, because damn, what am I doing in fall of 2054? I'm free! Well, thankfully, Ubisoft will have me covered alongside a slew of other game companies releasing new games in the same series year after year without fail. Keyword being not out. It all comes crumbling down at some point, man. There's no way you can keep that schedule up forever, but it's interesting to see how we got to the points we get. Let's take a look at some video game franchises that pumped out yearly releases because I'm getting cold. When I hear annual release, nothing fits the definition quite like old yell about shit. Call of Duty, pushing out at least one new game every single year since 2003. How the hell do you do that? Well, you have the first main developer, then the second main developer, then another developer come in to assist the main developer, eventually becoming the third developer, with all these outside folk developing your spin-off side titles until game development becomes so complicated you force every single one of your developers to work on Call of Duty. We got the guys who make Skylanders helping out. At that point, just have the developers call their mom. I need help. Call of Duty had a flow to its development. Infinity Ward would work on a game for 2 years, and so would Treyarch, meaning you could alternate between both for yearly releases. But as time passes, expectations rise. More content, better graphics. We need an extra year to develop all this, so in comes Sledgehammer Games to increase that 2-year development to 3. And that worked just fine until 2023, when they were finally going to take a breather and just release an expansion pack for the game that launched in 2022. Until they ran up to Sledgehammer Games at the last minute and told them to make it a full game. That was a great idea. They just couldn't fathom a year without a full new Call of Duty release. I mean, think about how disappointed the fans would be. This sucks. Thank God they got Modern Warfare 3. This sucks. Everything about this game feels completely cobbled together, rushed out the door. An expansion pack turned full-blown title at the last minute, all to keep with tradition. But in the process, you ruin a legacy, reputation, expectations, the whole package. Now, they've had troubles in the past sticking to a yearly schedule. Black Ops 4 didn't include a single-player campaign. They said it was because single-player was never part of the plan. This game was designed entirely around the multiplayer experiences because players didn't care about the campaign anyways. If you really believe that, why did every Call of Duty after this have a campaign? The yearly release feels like it devalues each experience before it. When you see how much stuff is crammed into each of these titles, how many developers need to work on them, how these games are designed as if they're living, ongoing experiences, but they just end after 9 months to make way for the next one, it just feels like a waste. Because say what you will about Call of Duty, but they can be truly some of the most AAA experiences in all of gaming. The presentation, amount of content, it puts so many other titles to shame, so to just throw that all away for another one less than a year later is just so damn unnecessary. do we truly need a new Call of Duty every year? Oh yeah, as long as my chair keeps getting uneven. But looking at the games as games and not revenue spikes, it's obvious these just don't make sense as annual releases anymore. Much like Assassin's Creed, which gave up the annual release schedule back in 2016. Why and how the hell did a new Assassin's Creed come out every year? This franchise felt milked to death, even compared to Call of Duty. At least there, you have different development teams each entry, 6-hour single-player campaigns, plus online multiplayer. Felt a bit more digestible as a yearly thing, at least during the Xbox 360 days. Now, Assassin's Creed, 20-hour single-player campaigns with multiple DLC expansions releasing into the next year with online multiplayer as well. You're playing this every year? Done. Finally. From 2009 to 2015, there was a mainline Assassin's Creed each and every holiday, and for the most part, they delivered exactly what was expected, which was comforting, yeah, but meant there was practically no time available to evolve the franchise in meaningful ways. There was time, however, to evolve it in dog shit ones. 2014, Assassin's Creed Unity nearly single-handedly proved that yearly releases were actively hurting the series. No. So people are already tired of the constant games, and you put one out that doesn't work? We'll get them next year! This was the M. Obviously, this wasn't gonna work for the franchise moving forward, prompting Ubisoft to take more time with each entry, returning in 2017 with Assassin's Creed Origins, which definitely felt like that new step the series needed to take. I mean, comparing this to Assassin's Creed Syndicate is like night and day. This isn't bad, but this isn't bad 9. Origins was a breath of fresh air for Assassin's Creed. The extra year of development allowed them to create a far more detailed world with deep, richer action RPG gameplay, which they followed up with 2 more entries over a period of 6 years. God, but there's so much longer now, and we have to wait so much more between releases. Gosh, I just wish we're right back where we started. You don't know you'll miss something until it's gone, man. Assassin's Creed Mirage in 2023 was a return to the traditional formula prior to Origins, the formula that was used in nearly 10 consecutive entries. Yeah, oh man, we need more of that. To be fair, these Assassin's Creeds were damn bloated. I mean, 60 hours? You could do so much else with that time, like procrastinate. Maybe later. I feel that Ubisoft didn't really know what to do with the extended development time other than just make these games as long as possible. Hey, they knew how to pump out a new Assassin's Creed every year. You give them 3 years to make one and they'll just make it 3 times as long. Mirage showcases how sometimes bigger isn't always better. Some people may prefer when things were more simple, though to expect even a simpler experience every holiday, I mean, much like Call of Duty, even more so. Whenever a new Assassin's Creed would drop, I felt that severely undermined and undervalued last year's, and why did it have to be that way? What the hell about stealth action adventure games set in historical times screams, I know what I'm doing for the next 6 years. Ubisoft made the right call pumping the brakes here, while also acknowledging that, yeah, while the series has evolved, that didn't negate the original style. It's good to have both, just not under the pressure of releasing every single year. Ubisoft has Just Dance for that anyways. Every year since its inception, at least one new Just Dance has released, because, well, this one doesn't have Mambo number 5. Awesome! But this one doesn't have Boogie Wonderland. Great! But this one doesn't have Mambo number 5. Just Dance is the type of annual release you can understand damn well how and why they put it out every single year. Hell, if they took a year off, I'd be genuinely concerned. Of course, you need to put out a new Just Dance every fall because you need new songs. I don't want to be stuck with bring on this year's track list, plus some extra gameplay additions and or enhancements. But let's be honest here, for the most part, what set these games apart from each other was the year they were released in, which is definitely why they started getting named after them. Or there's a few thousand entries I missed. But whenever you see a game like this that's practically a glorified expansion pack, I think we've all had the thought cross our minds. Hey, why not just release a content update for the previous title? Well, Ubisoft listened to us. Them! Starting with 2023 edition, Just Dance no longer received a traditional physical release. Instead, you'd get a download code to redeem a pack of songs in the Just Dance app. So,
this is no longer an annual release. It's just new songs are added to a Just Dance hub with a bundle of them being sold at retail every year. You know, I'm not sure if this was the best move considering most of the Just Dance audience looks like this. Okay, so 3 years prior in the UK, the Wii version of Just Dance was the second best-selling version. The Wii version! Then 3 years later, you're gonna ask that same audience to do all this? This is for sure a sound concept for the future of Just Dance, but when you don't do a physical release, you cut 2 platforms from your support, you remove major features from previous games since this is sort of starting from scratch, you require an internet connection, and you charge a full $60 when previous games launched at $50, what did you expect to happen? More! But hey, I gotta give Ubisoft credit for taking the logical step most other annual franchises are too afraid of. If your games are glorified song packs anyways, why not just do this? Of course, the logical step for some is boiling water on the crotch for Just Dance. But you gotta admit, this feels like the natural evolution for these things. I may not be a fan of live service games, but they do make sense for some titles. Specifically, sports games. Now, when you talk to those who actually play these things and ask what's the difference between FIFA 22 and FIFA 23, they'll genuinely say, graphically, FIFA 23 is better across the board. Better animations, there's new gameplay elements like power shots, these are both FIFA 21. Without little changes outside of the updated players and rosters, one may ask, why not just have one game you evolve and make additions to through updates and paid DLC? One may also ask you to go f*** yourself and spend $70 every year.
Well, at least they asked.
This is how these sports games have always been, so it's hard to imagine them releasing in any other fashion, but just for a second, picture a game simply titled Madden NFL that releases like any other Madden game. But for the next 3 years, it's updated constantly. Then when the time is right, you release Madden NFL 2. With completely reworked gameplay, enhanced visuals, I mean, it would be a brand new experience. See? Nah, instead, a new Madden game every year for 30 plus years. It's pretty impressive they've been able to keep at it this long, especially when other sports games need to take a year or two off to catch their breath, and when some of these games are at the quality they are. I mean, Madden 2004 won Game of the Year at the Spike Video Game Awards. Madden 2005 won Best Song in a Game for American Idiot by Green Day. This was like the best damn franchise of all time! But that was just the cherry on top. The Madden 08 on top was... God, I love Madden. Nowadays, it seems like the franchise is in this perpetual state of 60s on Metacritic. They're more concerned with putting it out every year rather than genuinely improving the core game. So if the game's so bad now, why do they keep pumping them out?
I don't know!
At one point or another, EA has annualized a handful of their franchises. Need for Speed was every year for a bit there, so was Medal of Honor, Skate, iSims, hell, Hasbro Family Game Night. It's fall again, bitch. But series like Battlefield are roughly biennial releases, occurring every other year most of the time. Doesn't help things. That's the schedule many franchises were on. Seemed like you could always expect a new entry 2 years later, especially during the Xbox 360 days. Well, if there's annual and biannual, what the hell would Guitar Hero and Rock Band be? A spree. But I want to talk a franchise that many didn't even realize was annual. One that feels like we only get new games every millennia. One that is considered to be one of the most revered series in the whole medium.
August already?
It's The Legend of Zelda, the yearly franchise. Starting in 2013, there was a Zelda game released each and every year until 2022. Now, we are stretching things here with spin-offs, remakes, re-releases, the works, which, hell, does 2012 count since we got Zelda 1 and 2 on the 3DS eShop? 2018 barely counts since all we got there was Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, but hey, for nearly 10 years, Nintendo had some kind of Zelda release annually, and goddamn, not even Mario Party did that. That's the Nintendo franchise I immediately think of when annual releases are brought up, but look at this. So the first 3 entries were one right after another, but they launched a year later outside of Japan, meaning between Mario Party 3 and 4, there was a gap in Japan, but not over here. So does this count? How about the carnival games? Do those count too? Regardless, Mario Party comes out in bursts. We get 4 straight years of nothing but 1 year off, back again, 5 years gone, Mario Party 9. Explain this gap in your resume. Actually, just flat out explain the resume. Starting with Mario Party 9 though, we got annual releases of Mario Party news at the very least until 2018. Yeah, if we want to count getting Mario Party 10 announced in 2014, you might as well count that moment in 2006 when I said the word Mario Party. Damn, this series just won't stop! But every series needs to at some point, even if it's just for a second. But forcing yourself to release something at the same time over and over again gives you no time to improve or evolve your craft. You're just gonna end up pumping out the same stuff over and over and over again, and you can end up resenting your work. You no longer look at it as a creative project, rather as something you have to get done so you can get to work on the next thing. Yes, consistency can be great, and it can be so exciting looking forward to that new release at the same time you're always used to. But I think the health and quality of a brand is more important than rushing something out just to say that you did. Annual releases aren't inherently bad, not at all, but they can become that if you don't just pump the brakes sometimes. Realize that while these are products, they're also art, and if you start looking at them as just products, consumers are gonna start looking at them like that as well, and eventually really stop caring about these series.
It's all about balance. These are businesses at the end of the day, but they're businesses in the first place because the quality and integrity as these games is art. And if you're not willing to see that, stop!
You heard the videotape! Everybody, let's put together something special, something we're all proud of, something we're making because we want to! Where's my creative leads?
You fired them.
Whoa! What a dream! Hey y'all, Scott here. Hey y'all, Scott here. Can you imagine what life is gonna be like in 2019? We'll have more air, no more murder, immortality, and like 2 subscription services. So I was eating cereal this morning and it was fucking dreadful, thanks for asking. Oh my god, I'm only $7.99 a month away from not watching anything. Subscription services are a corporation's best friend. Why get money for one thing once when you could get money for one thing lots? This is the hip new thing now in the entertainment industry, paying a monthly fee to access some jank service online. Companies are trying to attach a subscription model to every medium out there: film, music, video games, storage units. It's all about obtaining a continuous flow of money regardless of the product offered. As an example, you buy one $20 digital movie on the PlayStation Store. First off, let me add to my list of people I don't trust. And secondly, that was just a one and done purchase. You paid $20 for one movie, it's time to move on, it's over. But with a subscription service that offers movies, you have to pay a monthly fee to watch the films on it. The monthly fee is usually pretty low, which makes this the more attractive option to most people. A lot of people just want to be able to watch movies whenever they want. They don't really care what movie it is, they just want something to combat the loneliness. But as the months roll by, you keep paying the fee. People who would only buy a few movies a year end up continuously paying for these services they might forget to use after a couple of weeks. That's how they get ya. I always have $5 left over at the end of the month. Might as well give it to Apple TV Plus for doing nothing. They earned it. Of course, the subscription model wouldn't be offered if people weren't supporting it. It works really well for a lot of things. Some truly offer value that make them a no-brainer to subscribe to. And then some just taste bad. Subscription services are flooding our screen bricks. Every single company thinks their shit doesn't stink and they can make their own service. CBS All Access is pretty much the same thing as Saltines Plus. Who wanted this? Who said cut? Now, if CBS had a subscription service, man, if only. The whole subscription trend in the industry truly started with Netflix. So, Netflix, right? It was all about renting DVDs online delivered by mail. No late fees, what an idea. Because everybody knew the worst aspect of going to the video store to rent a movie was going to the video store to rent a movie. But after a while, Netflix started to offer something amazing, something that changed the entertainment industry forever: streaming video on demand. Videos on demand was and still is the most terrifying term of all time. To me, it means those elusive movies for sale through your cable subscription. I felt like if I wasn't careful enough, I'd accidentally buy a college semester worth of movies. But no, you see, streaming video on demand through Netflix was so much breezier. Offered as a part of your Netflix membership, you could instantly watch so many different movies and TV shows through the power of Netgear. Now, I jumped on the Netflix train around 2011 or so. I nabbed a free trial, downloaded the Netflix app on my Wii, and enjoyed so much content. Pretty much almost any movie or TV show you searched up on Netflix, it was there. They had such a wealth of stuff available to watch, and for only $9 a month, I knew I saved this for something. Netflix is amazing. Netflix is okay. Various companies saw how well Netflix was doing, how much people started preferring just having a Netflix subscription compared to just a cable box, and overall the money that could be made from an ongoing subscription model. And now, I have to subscribe to 5 different apps to get all the stuff I used to get with just Netflix? Hulu used to be a website focused on offering episodes of TV shows for free the day after they aired. Now, it's just a shittier Netflix. Amazon Prime Instant Video. Yeah, everybody has it because everybody has Amazon Prime. I enjoy spending $119 a year for faster shipping on products, but apparently a part of that offer, I get Amazon's own version of Netflix. Listen, you take Instant Video out of my Amazon Prime membership, I wouldn't even blink. And then of course we have the newcomers, Apple TV Plus and Disney Plus. Now, Disney Plus was created because Disney owns 29% of the world, the other 71% is water, and they obviously felt like they had enough content of their own to push their own service rather than just license it all to Netflix. That's fair enough. Now, Apple made Apple TV Plus because, I don't know, they were bored. And then we have HBO Now, CBS All Access, Starz, Peacock, DC Universe. Oh, for fuck's sake. I hate this. It's just irritating. All these corporations are pumping everybody up like, look guys, we're making our own subscription service. It's gonna be great. When they used to put all their content on Netflix and Hulu a few years ago. How am I supposed to respond to that? Like, oh, yeah, I can't wait to spend $10 more a month on something I used to have access to, but you ripped away from me. Oh, yeah! So I maintain the opinion that Netflix is the best overall. I think it offers the best variety of content with both movies and TV shows for all different kinds of people. Pretty much anybody and everybody would be fairly content with a subscription to Netflix. However, if you can't find a TV show you want to watch, that means it's probably on Hulu. Hulu makes me wince. Like, they've got an incredible roster of TV shows on here, and like 2 movies, but I despise how the app is set up. I can see only 3 options at once and only see 1 image for the one I'm selecting. I should be getting an allowance for browsing this. I do like that you can subscribe to Hulu with advertisements included for less money. I subscribe to a lot of adless stuff, so I don't see a ton of commercials anymore, and sometimes I feel like I'm out of the loop on the ads people hate watching. Amazon Prime Video. No. Okay, first off, Amazon. Why are you even trying to compete against Netflix if you're not even going to invest in making a decent video player? And then the selection, oh my god. They should rename Amazon Prime Video to Puppet Movies and Friends. It seems that pretty much anybody can make their content available through Amazon Prime, and it shows. But what if the show you want to watch isn't on any of these services? Well, it's probably on one of the apps nobody gives a shit about. Netflix used to be incredible, I loved it, but now I feel like companies just keep pulling their stuff off just to make their own streaming service, and I personally find it kinda dumb in some cases. Take for example, The Office. Became more popular than some religions in recent years, and you wanna know why? Because it was on Netflix. And then NBC said, we'll make our own streaming service and put The Office on it exclusively. Stop it. The Office experienced a huge resurgence in popularity because of Netflix. Everybody has Netflix, and seeing The Office's icon mocking you on the app constantly, well, everybody's bound to watch the full series 3 times in a row at some point. Now, forcing people to subscribe to an infinitely inferior streaming service with less original content and less old content, which costs roughly the same price, well, say goodbye to the growing popularity of The Office, NBC. Locking this show behind your own app makes it less likely people who weren't even born when The Office premiered are going to discover it for the first time. I mean, Peacock is fundamentally going to be a streaming service for The Office at this point. Who's subscribing to this thing for Punky Brewster? You'll appeal to people who are already fans of the show, but you're making it a lot harder for people to become new fans of it this way. And then there's DC Universe, a streaming service for DC Comics content. Why? At least with Marvel content, that's a part of Disney Plus, which is less expensive than DC Universe, and it includes a larger variety of content. See, this is how I see things. DC has their own streaming service. Great, good for them. I knew they could do it someday. They get all the money from people subscribing to that. But the fact a lot of this content is locked behind a DC-centric streaming service, that means it's only going to appeal to DC fans. For what reason would somebody who's never seen DC content before subscribe to DC Universe? Loneliness? See, if DC partnered with Netflix or Hulu or even, yeah, they wouldn't immediately get as much money from that, but they'd get more exposure, more people would be able to watch this stuff and have chances to become fans of DC content, and thus, you'd sell more merchandise and movie tickets. All these companies think they can have their own streaming service, and it's just getting kind of ridiculous. If you need one service, just get Netflix. You get the most variety and good content with that subscription. Hulu is fine. I think they have a better roster of TV shows, but I hate browsing the Green Lagoon. And then Amazon Prime Video, I always see myself saying, oh shit, this exists? But of course, that's just the movies and TV show subscription services. You know how things roll around here. I love all things this, and yeah, video games are starting to be pushed into the subscription service model. See, pretty much most of the big game companies are pushing their own services, and I admit the idea of having a Netflix-style app for games is amazing, in concept. Movies and video games are far more different than they initially seem. See, I keep subscribing to Netflix because hey, I get thousands of movies and TV shows I can just pop on in the background while I'm busy evading, or I can watch some stuff at the edge of my seat. Movies are much more flexible in terms of how you can consume them. They're much less of a time sink. There's not much of investment you have to make to watch one. Playing video games requires you to be much more deliberately invested. Many games take 10 plus hours to play through, and it's not like I can just throw a video game on in the background. I'm actively controlling it that entire time. To me, I'm much more invested in picking a game I'm gonna sit down and play compared to picking a movie I'm gonna watch. I don't know, man. Well, let's take a look at the video game subscription services, see if they can win me over. Well, here we have EA Access. $5 a month for access to the entirety of EA. We can play FIFA 20, FIFA 19, FIFA 18, FIFA 17, FIFA 16, FIFA 15. Yes, so EA Access gives us free trials / early access to new EA games, as well as an unlimited supply of EA classics. Unlimited equals 30. The game library is more robust on Xbox One. There are some Xbox 360 titles available a part of that subscription, but here on PlayStation 4, I'm gonna throw it out there, EA, you did it. You officially changed the definition of value. Having the past couple of Maddens and FIFAs take up a good chunk of the huge collection of games available is like Netflix having the past 5 months of the Weather Channel available. These games are downloaded onto your system and you can do all kinds of things like play them. There's just not a great variety of games here, and most of the games available for free, a part of the subscription, aren't worth anything anymore. On top of that, a lot of these games aren't good. No, maybe $5 a month, but we can get it for $30 a year, and okay. I mean, the trial access to the newer game says up to 10 hours can be played for free, and that's pretty generous. I think there's some value to that. Just like how there's some value to death, like thank God there's no EA access in the afterlife. Well, Ubisoft has their own take on the subscription service. Uplay Plus, it's all about spending. $15 a month makes this one of the most expensive subscription services, and all for what? Uno? Rayman Forever? Uplay Plus features over 100 titles, most of which are significantly less than $15 right now. Sure, the service includes recently released Ubisoft titles as a part of your subscription, but they're Ubisoft titles. Like, those things go on sale a week before they release. Also, I don't know who would ever say, man, you know what? I love Ubisoft, and only Ubisoft. I wish there was a subscription service for me. Oh my God. Contrary to popular belief, there is such a thing as too much Ubisoft. Well, let's jump into the big boys. Here we have PlayStation Now, Sony's big subscription service. This is primarily focused around streaming the games to your console or PC. It's truly like Netflix for games, and just like Netflix, it's fine. PlayStation Now was pretty much created as Sony's way of making PlayStation 3 games playable on, God forbid, something other than the PlayStation 3. It had a bizarre infrastructure, which makes playing its games on other hardware difficult to do. So they had to take the hardware and stream the games being played over to your hardware, and the end result was surprisingly alright. Not great, but far from unplayable. There are a few PS2 and PS4 games playable here, but the bulk of the lineup is PS3, and it's great. They have Ratatouille for PlayStation 3, you don't see that on EA Access. The graphical quality is almost like a YouTube video. You know how some videos, when you stream them, look a little washed out or blurry? Yeah, that's PlayStation Now games. Now, the PS4 titles can be downloaded to your system, which is a nice feature, and the price point is rock solid. $10 a month with actual games people want to play right now getting thrown on the service recently. Yeah, back when PlayStation Now first started up, I remembered you needed a subscription, and on top of that, you had to rent most of the games? Oh man, how could one Sony be so stupid? Right now, PlayStation Now streaming is imperfect, but it works fine enough. For games that require pinpoint precision, playing them through the internet is a death sentence, but games that are a little looser with how you control them work alright. But you see, streaming games has always worked, but it's never been ideal in my opinion. That's where Xbox Game Pass comes in, the messiah of gaming subscription services. Game Pass has a library that is crazy good. Pretty much any of the Xbox exclusives you want, including all the recently released ones day and date alongside the standard release. Tons of third-party offerings, old games, new games, games from all different kinds of genres, all downloadable to your console, playable offline. Best part about it, it's $10 a month and is usually on sale for like one. Well, there's also Nintendo Switch Online. We get a bunch of jank NES games for signing up and some pretty solid SNES games as well. It's $20 a year, okay, it's fine. All right, so let's wrap everything up with these subscription services. All right, Netflix, they're pretty good. Not as good as they used to be, but hey, none of us are. So it gets a B. All right, Hulu, that's a mighty fine selection of TV shows they have there, and their layout reminds me that I still feel pain. It legitimately stops me from using the app most of the time, so they get a C. Amazon Prime Video. So first off, navigating Amazon Prime on any device is a half-baked slog of a time, and the selection is Netflix and Hulu's table scraps. D. All right, Apple TV Plus, you get a Y for why? Disney Plus, not bad. They have a lot of content, but I still feel like Netflix is superior because it has a wider range of content. I feel like Disney Plus caters to a lot of specific fans, but I still feel like Netflix is better for generally everybody. So, B-. EA Access. So this is one of the most unnecessary subscriptions of all time. EA doesn't create a broad enough range of content to really warrant having a subscription. It would have gotten an F, but the fact that it's $30 a year and you have a lot of trials of newly released games where you can play for up to 10 hours, D-. You did it, EA. Uplay Plus will go down in history as Ubisoft's expensive subscription service that absolutely nobody subscribed to. I've been waiting for the past 10 seconds to give another D-. PlayStation Now. Back in the day, it was laughingstock. Right now, it's not bad. B-. Now Xbox Game Pass is pretty much a better version of PlayStation Now. You don't get as many games as you do with PlayStation Now, but you download all the games to your system, which means you don't have to worry about the problems that arise with streaming. You get a ton of new releases, and with PlayStation Now, the newest games that are on that service are about a year old, so B+. And Nintendo Switch Online. It is $20 a year, which means it gets a pass. So subscription services, some may offer value, some definitely not. It can be really convenient to have all this content available to you for a small monthly fee, but it can get really irritating how every single company thinks they can start their own. Also, Netflix doesn't accept check by mail. What the hell? Now, I personally think video games aren't the greatest fit for the Netflix model. Even with Game Pass, you have to wait for the games to download, and with streaming, there's too many downsides. It still takes a while to load on PlayStation Now, and the quality takes a bit of a hit, and there is input lag. But overall, my main takeaway about all of this is... we don't need this many! Hey y'all, Scott here. If we're gonna be talking about the Wii, we might as well get this out of the way. The Wii is one of the most polarizing game consoles ever released. Many say it was nothing more than just a virtual bowling dust collector, and while that may be true, I personally believe that while it was very flawed, the Wii was also heavily underrated. The Nintendo Wii, everybody's least favorite console. I say that because while everybody likes a hearty dose of piss on this console at all times, let's be honest, everybody's had a superb experience one time or another on this thing. People like to dog on this poor guy for a multitude of reasons, many being totally warranted. The Wii was completely underpowered compared to its competition, the PS3 and Xbox 360. It was basically just another GameCube. The Wii was home to 90% shovelware, just games that were hot trash that stained clearance bins for ages. The Wii's Online blew. The Wii's motion controls were Gimmick Fest 2006. I mean, these are all definite problems, but I really like the Wii. It isn't my favorite Nintendo console, but it did a lot right. The design of this bad boy is stellar. The Wii is one of the nicest looking game consoles out there. It's incredibly small, compact, and it was so solid they had to include a stand with every purchase just to give the thing that much more class. The disc slot would illuminate a blue light whenever an update for the system was available, which was tart and annoying, but it's totally forgiven for a little thing around the block known as GameCube backwards compatibility. And that was, in my opinion, one of the Wii's greatest strengths. It was totally the all-in-one Nintendo box. You had access to the entire Wii and GameCube libraries, and in addition to that, every other Nintendo home console, other systems, and smaller downloadable Wii games via the Wii Shop channel. The Wii was the introduction to the Virtual Console brand, which were just older games now available on a digital storefront. But let's not forget another third of what was available on the Wii Shop channel, WiiWare, which was the brand used to describe downloadable smaller Wii games. WiiWare was definitely a hodgepodge of quality, but there were some pretty great WiiWare games out there back in the day. Dr. Mario Online RX, Fluidity, Mega Man 9 and 10, Excite Bike World Rally, World of Goo, and so on. And then we have the channels. You see, the Wii was the first Nintendo home console with a mandatory system menu. Yeah, the GameCube had this thing of a system menu going on, but the Wii menu was mandatory to peruse to get anywhere. Different applications were considered channels, which were either preloaded on the system or downloadable via the shop channel, and man, did the Wii ever have channels. The disc channel was always a mainstay in the family, a great crowd pleaser, but once you were all out of games to play, where better to lurk than the Mii channel? Making your own custom avatars was never as simple and fun as making Mii's was. It was just entertaining to see how out of this world you can make a Mii look or how close you can make it to look to another person. But man, was I ever into the photo channel. This channel is barely talked about to this day, and that angers me more than anything photo channel related should. The Wii came with an SD card slot, which meant you could take photos from it and display them on the big screen, and also let you go wild with some effects. When you wanted to become an elite member of the Economic Stimulation Squad, the Wii Shop channel was always there, and of course, who could forget the forecast and news channels? Just channels to keep you up to date with the latest news and weather forecasts, but if you wanted to stay up to date with Nintendo games, then you had to download the Nintendo channel, which I spent way too much time on as a kid. Video-wise, it had nothing but trailers for Wii and DS games, other than a weekly show entitled Nintendo Week. But it also included downloadable demos for Nintendo DS games you could play by wirelessly connecting your DS to the Wii. The internet channel was the way to watch YouTube channels on your TV back in 2008, and I would talk about the Everybody Votes channel, but I don't want to get into politics. The Check Me Out channel allowed you to upload your craziest Mii creations and compete in Mii-related character creation contests. Most of these channels have been discontinued by Nintendo. The only ones really usable these days are the Disc Me, Photo, and Wii Shop channel, and even the Wii Shop channel will be discontinued in early 2019. I liked dabbling in the Wii message board, which allowed you to send messages to friends, which I never used because the Wii's online infrastructure was gross. I mainly used it to track my playtime of games. I know more consoles do this. I love knowing how f***ing useless I was being some days by seeing just how much Mario Galaxy I was playing. Speaking of the Wii's online, obviously one of the console's biggest turnoffs. It just seemed like for everything the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 did right with online multiplayer and gaming, the Wii was just vomiting profusely at the thought of the internet. Some games worked really well, like Mario Kart Wii and GoldenEye 007. Yeah, that's all I got. What most people point at was the performance of Super Smash Bros. Brawl online, as it blew hard. The majority of other titles worked okay, but their performance was a far cry from Nintendo's competitors at the time. Oh yeah, and the Wii's controller was this honkin' thing. The Wii Remote, or sometimes referred to as the Wiimote. Either people hate this thing or can tolerate it. I can definitely tolerate it. The Wii Remote was actually really simple when you got down to it. Basically, an accelerometer and an IR sensor gave this thing the magic that was required for Wii Sports Bowling. The motion controls work well most of the time, it just depends on the game, in which problems can be attributed to bad programming a lot of the time. Of course, this design is a bit on the simple side for games released in the late 2000s, early 2010s, so plug in a nunchuck for more advanced control options because, gasp, is that an analog stick? Not enough? Well, you can always pop this bad boy into a wheel or a gun shell for an extra hearty dose of unnecessary. But of course you could pop this nugget onto the bottom of the controller to make the Wii Remote do what Nintendo said it could do at the very start. The Wii Motion Plus came out in correlation with Wii Sports Resort and added a gyroscope into the mix which allowed for more precise motion control. This was later fully built into new Wii Remotes named Wii Remote Plus. But hey, if you're like way into not using the Wii Remote, the Classic Controller and Classic Controller Pro sufficed as solid ways to play compatible games with more standard controllers. And if you wanted to use anything but your hands to control a game, the Wii Balance Board supported a few other games other than just Wii Fit. I'm fine using the Wii Remote, but it is nowhere near my favorite controller. Its versatility is neat, how they designed so many ways to play games with it, but overall, there are definitely other controllers I'd rather play games with. Speaking of which, on to the games, which is what I think makes the Wii so underrated. There were so many great first-party Nintendo games released on this thing, it was nuts. And it had a good amount of solid third-party games, plus some hidden gems. It definitely wasn't up to snuff with the GameCube's library in my opinion, but comparing it to say the Wii U or Nintendo 64, the Wii definitely brought the goods in the form of quality Nintendo exclusives. The launch of the system on November 19th, 2006 brought us Wii Sports, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and Excite Truck. Wii Sports, I gotta say, is one of the most important games of all time. You can scoff as much as you want, but you gotta stop at some point and admit, Wii Sports was a really fun game, and it brought so many people together. As a pack-in, there was a lot of replayability here, and while the motion controls were definitely still a bit primitive and in their early stages, they worked well enough that it made it consistently a hoot to play. But of course, if you weren't into that, you got Twilight Princess at launch, one of the most hyped up Zelda games of all time. Regardless of your opinion on Twilight Princess, having a Zelda game at launch is surely a plus. And Excite Truck, an odd bugger to round the 3 Nintendo launch titles out, but still a really solid game for the system. The Wii series of games were always a mainstay on the console. These were mostly fun games that really took advantage of the controller's capabilities. Not the system's capabilities, good god no, these games look like they were designed with 4 tubs of Play-Doh and nothing more. Wii Sports Resort, Wii Party, Wii Play, all have loads of fun to be had in them. But of course, there's also Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2 are excellent in the form of 2 discs. I said it before and I'll say it again, I plan to talk about these games at length soon, but for the time being, good job Nintendo! But if you wanted some 2D Mario action, Nintendo made a new 2D Mario game on a home console for the first time in decades, New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Yeah, the art style is bland and it doesn't feel as magical as playing Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World for the first time, but the new Super Mario Bros. Series is like comfort food. The Wii entry is a solid game and one of the better in the new Super series. It also also introduced simultaneous Mario multiplayer, but that was a mistake. Donkey Kong Country came swinging back courtesy of Retro Studios with Donkey Kong Country Returns, and what a game. I'm not a fan of the motion controls being used in this game, so I would personally recommend the 3DS version, but still, DKC Returns is fantastic. Kirby made a comeback on the Wii as well. While the series remained pretty consistent on handhelds, Kirby's Epic Yarn in 2010 was the first Kirby home console game since Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube in 2003. And that was a racing game. If we're talking platformers, it was since Kirby 64 in 2000. And Epic Yarn was pretty neat, man. Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of the tropes of standard Kirby games, but it's so pleasant to look at. It's just a fun game to relax and take your time through. Kinda like most Kirby games. If you wanted some standard Kirby action, just a year later in 2011, Return to Dreamland pummeled onto shelves, and hey, it's a standard Kirby game. A bit too generic Kirby for me personally, but I still enjoyed the game. And a year after that, Nintendo's final release on the Wii, Kirby's Dream Collection, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the franchise. A really great compilation, featuring for the most part the first half of Kirby's platformer history. What wasn't a really great compilation was Nintendo's offering during the 25th anniversary of Super Mario Bros. Nintendo re-released Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo on a Wii disc for $30, and included some extras like a history booklet and soundtrack CD. The game is just a ROM dump of the SNES original, a compilation remake of Mario 1, 2, 3, and the Lost Levels. Not one of Nintendo's greatest efforts, definitely. And speaking of Nintendo being lazy as piss, new Play Control! This was a series of games re-released that were simply GameCube games, now with motion controls in them, maybe with a few extra additions here and there. Some games like Pikmin 1 and 2 are blissful with motion and pointer controls, while Mario Power Tennis just feels tacked on. I don't know, sometimes I really like what new Play Control brought to the table, but other times it's like, I can already play GameCube games on the Wii. Re-releasing these things don't really do too much in terms of the concept of making sense. 2 Zelda games and 2 Metroid games. What a world we lived in. With Twilight Princess coming at launch and also being available on the GameCube, Wii owners would have to wait 5 years for a Zelda game made from scratch for the Wii, and Skyward Sword ahoy! Definitely not one of the most beloved Zelda games at the moment due to its over-reliance on linearity, motion controls, and hand-holding, but watch in 5 years, people will consider it the best Zelda game. Metroid got a fair amount of love on the Wii, with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption coming in 2007, the Metroid Prime trilogy containing the first 3 Prime games with Wii remote controls, and... Other M is considered one of the worst Metroid games, but I haven't played it, so let's just avoid this conversation entirely. Smash Bros. And Mario Kart, the 2 heaviest hitters of a Nintendo console these days. Mario Kart Wii was never one of my favorites, but hey, it's still a really solid Mario Kart. And Smash Bros. Brawl, my god, I will defend this game till the cows come home. Is it a great competitive game? No, it's too slow and has too many random elements like tripping and an unbalanced character roster. But it's a good, decent, great, solid game, man. Like, it has so much in it, has such an amazing character roster. It had a Wikipedia article detailing every Nintendo game released just for funsies. I really love Brawl as a game. I think it gets a bad rap for its lack of competitive nature, but man, I still think it's a really, really solid game. Punch-Out, dude. Punch-Out on the Wii is phenomenal. A bit too over-reliant on nostalgia, but still crazy fun and a great game. Now, of course, Nintendo had loads of other games on this thing: The Return of Sin and Punishment, Xenoblade Chronicles, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, Animal Crossing City Folk, Battalion Wars 2, WarioWare Smooth Moves and Wario Land Shake It, Big Brain Academy, Mario Strikers Charge, Mario Super Sluggers, effin' Excitebots. But still, there were notable missing franchises on the Wii: F-Zero, Star Fox, the other Mario sports games, Yoshi. Hey, some third-party offerings definitely made the gaps a little less wide with releases like Klonoa, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Mad World. Sonic Colors was one of the better modern Sonic titles. Also, the Wii was the first time we saw Mario and Sonic team up. What a whirlwind and a half. No More Heroes gained quite the cult following. Light Gun Games finally had a system to call their own. GoldenEye 007 is a crazy fun first-person shooter. Third parties didn't sleep on the Wii. But of course I'm leaving out a solid 9/10 of the Wii's library, which is this stuff. Yeah, the Wii was filled with shovelware, had less than stellar specs, with some pissy online, motion controls, and missing Nintendo franchises on it. But the Nintendo games that did appear on it were mostly pretty great, and man, there are some third-party offerings that definitely rock. The Virtual Console was awesome on the Wii, feeling much more fleshed out and thoughtful than forthcoming Nintendo console's legacy content offerings. It ain't perfect, but I think many should definitely look more at the positives with the Wii, as they will definitely find something they'd like. It's an underrated console that, while flawed, delivered a lot more than you may recall. The Wii isn't a perfect system, but it shouldn't be chastised for popularizing motion control. Rather, it should be celebrated for its amazing first-party lineup, interesting concepts, and great hidden gems, is what I would say if I was fucking asinine. Do you really think I'd be in support of Virgin McGames console over here? Please, I'm operating on a strict anti-virgin policy. Hey all, Scott here. I finally found my fourth calling in life, a match made in heaven. I finally opened up my own tattoo parlor. Welcome to the Scab Lab. You ever think to yourself, man, skin? Well, this is the place for all you tattoo chow hounds, such as myself, and if you're lucky, you get your picture in the No Infections Club. We give out free samples, and if you don't like it, I am so sorry for what I just did. Of course, to prove how much I believe in our product, I will give myself a sleeve. I'm thinking blue today. The business and I weren't a good fit.
Sometimes two things just go together. 7 if you're open-minded. And with every new video game console released with new unique features, it gets me thinking about what games would be a match made in heaven for it. On the opposite end of things though, some games just don't make sense on some consoles, but damn it, they pull through, like Boogie on PlayStation 2. You think God knew this would be a thing eventually? Motion controlled dancing game on Wii, ported to PS2 3 months later. After all, those players were sending us death threats. I mean, so many Wii games were also made available on the PlayStation 2 and vice versa, but most of those games were standard video games, ones that made sense with a normal controller in mind. But you get games like Boogie and Rayman Raving Rabbids going multi-platform that really only make sense on the Wii. They were all about crazy motion controls, but I'm a real gamer. I need a controller to play Nintendogs, not that pussy touchscreen. According to Wikipedia, although anticipation was high for the game, it received negative reviews.
Yeah. Boogie!
Better than the sequel's Wikipedia page, the second line is denying the rumor of Wii balance port support. Hey, the people have to know. But those are examples of games that just don't feel right on certain platforms, which just goes to show the Wii was the perfect place for them. Xbox snapped exclusive games in certain series for the entirety of its existence. Series that were PlayStation staples like Oddworld and Tomb Raider were exclusive to Xbox consoles, which didn't feel off as much as they felt dirty. Like, come on guys, you paid to make Rise of the Tomb Raider exclusive for a year, and was it really worth it? Does this game's blood scream Xbox? But then you have the perfect fit, which in some cases are games that never even happen. How in God's name did a new Pokemon Snap game not release on Wii U? It's the perfect console for it! You have the Wii U gamepad and you can look around with it and snap pictures with the trigger. I mean, that sounds fucking abhorrent, but I'm thinking this from Nintendo's perspective. They love bullshit like this. And honestly, it wouldn't have been that bad. They had the idea of using this thing as a camera in other games, namely Fatal Frame. They funded Fatal Frame on Wii U, but not Pokemon Snap. They had Miiverse, you could share your Pokemon pictures with other Wii U owners within your own secret club? Like I don't already do that, but still! Come to think of it, the Nintendo 3DS could have had a Pokemon Snap, using Fatal Frame as another example. It's always my best excuse. There's a spin-off on here, Spirit Camera, using augmented reality, which Pokemon famously did with Pokemon Go on smart devices, so you could have made a bad Pokemon Snap game this way. In the end, I'm happy they waited until the Nintendo Switch to bring Snap back via new Pokemon Snap, as there's really no gimmicks like what I've been talking about. Just a pure new Snap game. But I love nonsense like this, and Nintendo does too. Because of that, it's just puzzling to me they didn't bring the series back on these platforms as they had gimmicks prime for a new game. Pardon my French, but I'm gonna talk about Wii U more. Minecraft was a game that felt tailor-made for the Wii U. With that being said, what the hell was this version of Minecraft? Nintendo built up a massive announcement in late 2015 with it being Minecraft Wii U Edition. No matter how you slice it, that was a big deal for Nintendo. Let them have this moment. But the concept of Minecraft on Wii U was perfect. That gamepad touchscreen would have made item management and crafting a dream, to which the developer of Minecraft Wii U Edition said, that would have been cool. Minecraft Wii U Edition ended up being nothing more than a straight port of Minecraft. No real exclusive gameplay tweaks taking advantage of the Wii U's interface, no touchscreen support, and no advantages to using the gamepad. It was just Minecraft. So yeah, Minecraft was a perfect fit for the Wii U, but all we ended up getting was Minecraft on the Wii U. I mean, I guess there's actually touchscreen support, but it's not intuitive. I was thinking a setup on the bottom screen designed for touch, not shoehorning it in as a secondary input that barely registers half the time. After responding justifiably to such a port, I've got to ask, how did Ape Escape never go to the PlayStation Vita? Ape Escape was the go-to game on PlayStation 1, showcasing how dual analog control sticks can work. Not only was the Vita Sony's first dedicated handheld with 2 sticks, but you had all this other stuff stuff. Cameras, a touchscreen, a back touchscreen, augmented reality, 3G cellular. What I would give for an Ape Escape game to use 3G. The PlayStation Vita was more advanced than my immune system, and while a few games definitely took advantage of and showed the potential of it, I just feel like an Ape Escape would have been a no-brainer. Its initial reason for existence was to validate a controller, so why not validate all this other junk? Or even the PlayStation VR, when that released for PS4, I think Ape Escape would have been great to push on that platform, especially considering VR is where old series go to die. Looking forward to a new Chibi Robo VR game.
It's like it's not good right in front of me.
Speaking of PlayStation, Sony released the PlayStation TV, so we didn't have to. It was a tiny box that was fundamentally just a PlayStation Vita without any of the extra garbage. So it wasn't a PlayStation Vita. This was during the great boom of media streaming boxes. You buy a Roku or Apple TV and you're set for life. The PlayStation TV was just that, except it couldn't stream anything. This was just a PlayStation Vita without the screen, yet the way they marketed it was like it was a streaming box, even though it couldn't play Netflix. Never got Netflix support, and if you wanted to stream basically any video apps, you had to connect it to your PS4, control your PS4 through remote play through the PlayStation TV, and then watch the supported apps through that, which still didn't always work. How could you name a product the PlayStation TV when there's barely anything TV about it? Just call it PlayStation Mini or something. Instead, honestly, I bet a few people bought this wanting to stream movies, and in the end, it caused more harm than good.
I'm going soliciting.
Yeah, so Netflix would have been a perfect fit for the PlayStation TV, because it would have made the thing make actual sense. Wow, it's been that long? The Call of Duty games, honest to God, were the perfect fit on Wii U, and they cut them off too soon. You got the HD graphics and traditional controller support, plus Wii Remote and Nunchuck support. It's crazy, I know, but some people like them. You get far more precision, and it's basically as close to keyboard and mouse you could get on a console, while also having its own benefits like an actual analog stick. But on top of that, you got split screen multiplayer without the split screen. One player on the gamepad, one on the TV. Frankly, Call of Duty and Wii U was a total match made in heaven, and I'm a proud member of that club. How did the DS get more entries? I guess I could say the same about the PlayStation Vita or PSP. The fact that those only got one Call of Duty each is honestly shocking. The PSP may have only had one stick, but I find it weird that it only got one Call of Duty before the series hit it big with Modern Warfare. And the PlayStation Vita only got one Call of Duty as well, but fun fact, it was bad. You'd think with the more hardcore nature of the PlayStation handhelds, Sony would have courted Activision more for Call of Duty games on the handheld, but no, the N-Gage got just as many. The DS? Man, it's weird. It's just weird. Sometimes I just have to be honest and tell it how it is. You may call Subway employees sandwich artists, I call them alchemists. Like, why was Castlevania Requiem put out on PS4 only, a collection of Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, right after Castlevania characters were revealed for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate exclusive to the Nintendo Switch? You put out a collection on the wrong platform. Same goes for the Disney Afternoon Collection, a compilation of old school Nintendo games. Sure don't want to put that on a Nintendo system. Mega Man Legacy Collection, released in 2015 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but not Wii U, the system where most of Mega Man's fans were. He was in Smash Brothers, but a good chunk of classic Mega Man games were already available on the system, the first 6, which is what Legacy Collection contained. So a compilation of games that are already available on the Wii U, it didn't make a ton of sense. I get that. But they still put the game on 3DS where all of these games are also available in the eShop. What was going on here? Michael Jackson's The Experience, another motion-controlled dancing game, a perfect match for Wii and Xbox 360's Kinect, yeah. What about Nintendo DS, 3DS, PSP, and Vita versions? Don't forget the Mac.
I never do.
Honestly, more often than not, it seems like publishers go out of their way to ensure their game doesn't go on the right systems. Alright, here's something that totally should have happened. Punch-Out on the 3DS. With the 3D display, I feel like you could have done a ton of great things with depth and timing your dodges. Punch-Out's always been a game of reading your opponent's movements and dodging at just the right time, so if the 3D display would have been utilized properly, it would have been easier to know exactly where the fist is in relation to your face and when exactly to block or dodge. It could have also done some fun in your face 3D effects, and I think Punch-Out on Wii's art style would have looked really good on the handheld. Now, for games that would have been perfect on Wii, Luigi's Mansion. What? Why did this not happen? The GameCube game had controls that could have perfectly used the Wii Remote's pointer. Instead, they opted to bring the game to 3DS for the 3D display, which I am crazy mixed on. Luigi's Mansion was originally tested with stereoscopic 3D, which was later scrapped, so the game appearing on the 3DS was almost like finally bringing justice to a badass idea. In reality, some people didn't think the remake was badass, but it was ass bad. It's incredibly commendable they got the original Luigi's Mansion to work on the system as well as it did, and seeing it in 3D is a cool way to rectify that original idea. But this was too little too late. Luigi's Mansion for 3DS came out in 2018, which finally gave my watch purpose. People didn't want to play on the 3DS at this point, they just wanted to play Nintendo Switch games. The 3DS can't get it up and has a resolution of 4. It's like
cool, but it's 2018, and I want this game in HD. So, I'm conflicted about this. I feel like the Wii would have been the perfect system for the original Luigi's Mansion, but the 3DS is a great choice. This remake just would have been way better if it was back in 2015 or something. But I have to say, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker was born to be a 3DS game. The title originated on Wii U and was a continuation of these types of stages that were in Super Mario 3D World, which was a sequel to Super Mario 3D Land on the 3DS, and that made 3D World feel not super at home on Wii U because it felt made for the 3DS, so when Captain Toad came out for 3DS, it felt like the circle had been completed. Ever since July 13th, 2018, I felt accomplished. Treasure Tracker stages feel like living dioramas. You can't jump and have to traverse them by rotating them fully around, figuring out where to go. With that 3D display and how short the levels are, this feels right at home on the handheld, more so than the more popular Nintendo Switch port. I'm putting the Switch version of the game in the weird choice category, especially since it came out quite a while before Super Mario 3D World did for the Switch. Like, that game makes far more sense logistically on Switch. Captain Toad had a lot more of the Wii U gamepad's DNA baked into the experience. A lot of Wii U games never felt like they took full advantage of the gamepad enough, or if they did, it was a total gimmick. Captain Toad was designed fully around the thing, not to the point that it makes the game more fun or completely unplayable without it, but looking at the Switch version, a lot of this feels way shoehorned on. Any touchscreen or microphone business had to be reworked on Switch. On the 3DS, it just feels made for the system. And when a game feels made for a system it wasn't even made for, that shows you how well it fits. And speaking of Mario 3D World, I have opinions. Considering Captain Toad got ported to 3DS, it almost made me want to see what 3D World would look like on the handheld. I mean, its direct predecessor was a 3DS game. I felt like if Nintendo was really strapped for cash, they could have attempted a 3D World port on the 3DS, to which I don't think it would be that bad. The game would have 3D support, and in many cases, I think would feel more at home. But overall, I actually think Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario Odyssey should have swapped consoles. Mario Odyssey has a ton of enemies you can capture and control, and I feel like that is prime for Wii U gamepad fodder. Plus, the world map you can bring up feels like it would have worked really well on the bottom screen at all times. 3D World having quick, bite-sized levels just works with the handheld form factor of the Nintendo Switch, plus being multiplayer focused is what the console's all about. But I've talked about the Wii U enough. For now. Why not go in the exact opposite direction and talk about some dumb bullshit I know nothing about? The Persona series has been consistently tied to PlayStation consoles, but spin-off titles, those could be anywhere. Hide. I never got that. If anything, it made sense to make the core series multi-platform and then put the spin-offs on a limited number of consoles, because why would the fighting game spin-off sequel to Persona 4 on a console that's never gotten Persona 4 do better than Persona 4? Persona 4 Arena and Arena Ultimax came to Xbox 360. Persona 4 was a PlayStation exclusive for the longest time, and these were really the only Persona games on Xbox at the time. Persona 5 Strikers was a sequel to Persona 5 while being a spin-off hack and slash at the same time and came to Nintendo Switch, but it came out without the original Persona 5 on the platform. Why put these spin-offs on systems but not the actual games? If you're confident enough these spin-offs will do well, what makes you think the games they're based off of that got critical acclaim across the board wouldn't? I guess Atlas at the time assumed 360 owners didn't want RPGs and just wanted fighting games, but it would have made more sense to me if they just fully committed to the series being PlayStation exclusive rather than sprinkling spin-offs on other systems. We're gonna give people Persona Q2. It's filled with fan service and is on a platform that never got any of the games it references. But sometimes games like to roll with the idea of being an imperfect fit for the console they're on. Take, for example, any M-rated games on the Wii and DS. Like Mad World. The whole gimmick of this game is that it's incredibly gruesome and bloody, and it's on the Wii. It almost felt like an in-joke. Let's put this gory game on the Wii. We'll lose all of money, but it'll be really funny. Weirdly enough, the fact Mad World didn't fit on the Wii at all made it fit that much more. I can't imagine this game on anything but the Wii. Opposites attract, and I could say the same about the House of the Dead franchise, but in reality, this is perfect on the Wii through and through. Light gun games kind of died out there, especially on consoles. You need specific hardware for them all, and regular first-person shooters were just more appealing to people. But the Wii brought them back with its pointer functionality. House of the Dead 2, 3, and Overkill work perfectly here. It may feel out of place with Overkill being one of the top Sayer f***s in all of gaming, but this series was right at home on the console. Same can be said for Sin and Punishment. They brought this Japan exclusive series back for the Wii worldwide because it was an unreal shooter, and it works flawlessly here, and honestly gives me a lot of hope for revivals like this. Sometimes you just have to wait until that perfect piece of hardware comes out. You can't just put whatever out on every single console. It pays to be patient sometimes. I thought as a kid Super Smash Bros. Brothers would be perfect on Nintendo DS, or even a 2D sprite-based one on Game Boy Advance. I was wrong, but I think they could have made a great stripped-down version, though they decided to wait until the Nintendo 3DS to make a portable Smash Brothers, and that was probably for the best. I thought Star Fox would have been perfect on Wii. You move the ship around with the nunchuck, aim with the Wii remote. They even had a little micro game about it in WarioWare Smooth Moves, but the Wii came and went and we never got a Star Fox, but that was probably because they had an even better idea for the next console. Bad example, but you get what I mean. You just have to wait for the right time to bring Metroid Prime back. Why was Federation Force on 3DS? You're making a multiplayer first-person shooter and you put it on this thing? The only reason they did this that makes sense is because the 3DS was cheaper to develop for, because when you think about what system makes the most sense for a co-op multiplayer first-person shooter with tons of online elements, yeah sure, pick the stupid pick. I think a lot of games would have been great to see on the Game Boy Color. I'm mainly talking DX ports, like with what happened to Link's Awakening. Originally a Game Boy game, brought over to color with a few enhancements. Just the fact it was in full color this time honestly wasn't enough, but some random extra tweaks were done to truly make this the definitive version. Games like Super Mario Land 2, or for the love of God, Metroid 2 would have been perfect candidates for Game Boy Color releases. A lot of games made for the wrong platform, well, they can be rectified later down the line. Mario Party the Top 100, I swear to God. You're gonna compile the best 100 minigames from across the home console Mario parties and put them on the 3DS and not even acknowledge the handheld ones at all? You're gonna put this game out with just one really bad game board to play multiplayer on? This was just done to put something out on the 3DS that holiday. It was obviously made not to celebrate the series, which is what the marketing would lead you to believe. It was developed because it was easier to make than a brand new Mario Party from scratch. And put it on the 3DS because just like Federation Force, it's just flat out easier to do that. And Mario Party on a handheld and not a home console is like ordering deep dish pizza with no cheese, sauce, and extra olives. Go ahead, try it. Thankfully, we got more chances with new Metroids and Mario Parties on systems that make more sense. But Mario Party only got like 2 games on the Wii, which is like, what? The Wii was a party game machine. How did the GameCube get 4 of them, but the Wii only got half of that? I mean, obviously the developer behind the scenes was going through some changes, so they couldn't really do a lot for a while, but at the time I was thinking, wow, Nintendo's really showing restraint not putting 11 Mario parties on the Wii, when in reality, Nintendo couldn't bear the weight. Some things just fit a console perfectly. It's shocking there's not more of it out there. Like football games on the Dreamcast, Wii U, GameCube with Game Boy Advance connected, pretty much anything with a personal screen on your controller. You can pick what you want to do without anybody else seeing. It truly makes me wish 08 was on the Dreamcast and thank Christ 09 wasn't. But that dual screen experience made games like The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures, Pac-Man Vs, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles possible. But the act of owning multiple Game Boy Advances and link cables made these games messier than they had to be. So, they waited to put some of them on consoles without the personal screen. God damn it! Why wasn't Pac-Man Vs on Wii U? Would've been perfect. It used one Game Boy Advance for a player playing as Pac-Man, then all the other players play as Ghost on the TV, and you're telling me they didn't put this on Wii U, but Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures 2 made the cut, but then they put it on Switch. Like, cool, but why did you skip out on the console when it made perfect sense on? Four Swords Adventures remade on Wii U? It would've been perfect as well. The dual screen experience, it could have been the first time they allowed for multiple gamepads on one system. But no, they remade Twilight Princess, a game I could already play on the Wii U. Like, come on! Why couldn't they release a USB adapter to play 3DS games on here? You have everything you need! You could have had one screen on the gamepad, the other on the TV. They re-released DS games digitally on the Wii U eShop. Let us play our 3DS games on this thing! I mean, sure, Super Mario Maker is a perfect fit on Wii U, but you wait to take all your dual screen games from the GameCube and put them on other platforms after the Wii U. Eternal Darkness would be crazy with the Wii U gamepad! Or like an actual Chibi Robo game, you could do a bunch of stuff with the gamepad, moving it around, or just actual sequels to a bunch of their DS games. You have a dual screen with a TV there. You can do so much with it. So, long story short, the Wii U's great. Hey y'all, Scott here, and this game blows. It could really use some plastic shit. Oh, thank God. The idea of figurines with NFC chips inside of them transporting characters into games captured the hearts of children and 30-year-olds everywhere. This genre exploded in popularity and really hit its peak in my opinion around 2014 to 2015. Nowadays, however, it's a bit of a different story. We had 4 major players in the ring: Skylanders, which is opting out of an entry this year, Disney Infinity, which was cancelled, LEGO Dimensions, which is being quietly supported less and less, and finally, Amiibo, the only Toys to Life competitor still kicking that barely did anything. The other games had you buying figures to play as characters in their respective titles. Amiibo basically says, who likes costumes and cheap additions to games? How is Amiibo doing well enough to stay afloat when it debatably had the lamest in-game functionality of the bunch? Probably because these are characters engraved into the minds of collectors everywhere. Figures of them obviously would make a lot of people happy. Well, it's been a rocky road for the Toys to Life line, and the idea started in 2001 with the Nintendo e-reader. This add-on for the Game Boy Advance allowed you to swipe cards to unlock games, levels, or what have you in select titles. Some of the more prominent games that used it included Animal Crossing and Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. However, it did a classic hard fail and just didn't catch on. Fast forward to 2013, where Nintendo finally unveiled their Toys to Life competitor, some garbage Pokemon figures that were only obtainable in blind bags exclusively at GameStop for use in a garbage eShop game for the Wii U. Hey, that must be the Pokemon Rumble U fan community again. Finally, at E3 2014, Nintendo unveiled their line of Toys to Life figures, named Amiibo, to be released alongside Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. I thought they looked cool, but I've never been much of a figurine guy, so I just kinda shrugged it off. Listen, I have a solid tree trunk's worth of games in this room. I think they speak for themselves in terms of what I enjoy. I don't need posters or figurines to emphasize that. And then Smash Bros. For Wii U came out. I wasn't able to secure the GameCube controller bundle for the game, so I had to resort to pre-ordering all the components separately. The game, the adapter, the controller, and I thought, why not? I got a Mario Amiibo in that order too. Thought it was a cool little figure. And then it hit me. So this is what overcompensation looks like. Amiibo is a Toys to Life platform, of course. These figures have NFC chips in their bases which allow for you to unlock certain things in compatible games either on Wii U, 3DS, or Nintendo Switch. The idea behind Amiibo that set it apart from the competition was that these figures can be used across multiple games on Nintendo platforms rather than just one specific game. Alas, not all Amiibo are compatible with every game. That kinda makes everything feel a bit fragmented and makes some figures much more valuable than others when taking into consideration in-game functionality. As somebody who doesn't care for figurines, I like the Smash Bros. Amiibo because they were the same as the trophies in the game. I thought that was so cool, I had to get them all. But also as somebody who doesn't care for figures, I don't display these things. These guys sit comfortably in an ottoman most of the time. I mainly only collected the Smash Bros. Series, but of course I have a few others. The Yarn Yoshi Amiibo are phenomenal. However, on second thought, I only really needed one. I never really needed all the colors. I love the 8-bit 30th anniversary Mario Amiibo. It's so neat to see the pixel art from all sorts of different angles. And the cool thing is, it all lines up. Like, this is exactly what 8-bit Mario would look like in the front. They really thought this out. I like the diversity in sizes and detail in the figurines. I love Olimar's helmet, the shiny material used for Dr. Mario's pill. Captain Falcon looks dead on. For some reason, I always really like the Greninja Amiibo. It's so cool to own a miniature Rob the Robot. And look at Bowser with his spikes. Yeesh, I definitely wouldn't stick him in my mouth. We also have Shovel Knight, the first third-party Amiibo, as in this wasn't made by Nintendo. And because of that, yeah, it definitely looks a bit cheaper than the others. Not knocking Shovel Knight, super cool he is an Amiibo. It's just that you can obviously tell this wasn't first party. Nowadays, I barely buy any more figures. Honestly, I have the entire Smash line except Meta Knight and Wii Fit Trainer. I have almost all the Nintendo characters in figure form. I don't have an urge to run out and pick up a ton more of these things, which kind of blows because some of the more recent Amiibo look pretty bangin'. I definitely felt the Amiibo craze when the line launched, and a decent amount of others did as well. This venture for Nintendo experienced incredible popularity upon release, but that came to a screeching halt later down the line, and now is finally gaining a bit of a resurgence. On November 21st, 2014, alongside Smash Bros. For Wii U, the first 12 Amiibo were released. People generally just bought the characters or figures they liked, but then mass hysteria kicked the door in. People were starting to realize Marth, Villager, and Wii Fit Trainer were becoming very hard to find. Nintendo confirmed these figures were the rarer of the bunch, with rumors flying around they were discontinued as early as December 2014, which wasn't true. People started to go crazy for these figures and ended up buying more and more Amiibo since they were consistently going up in price on eBay and Amazon. It's simply that thing where people go crazy for a product when they know it's impossible to find. Wave 2 came out in December of 2014 with 6 figures, and they didn't even have a concrete release date here in North America. They just showed up when they showed up. Little Mac, Captain Falcon, and Pit were almost impossible to find. Other countries, however, didn't have nearly as big of an issue in terms of Amiibo supply. Over here, we suffered due to the West Coast port strike. This meant import Amiibo were becoming expensive as well, but in some cases were a solid alternative to trying to find US Amiibo in the wild. Wave 3 was one of the worst, as it was basically like Wave 2 with no concrete release dates, but adding in retailer exclusive Amiibo, which definitely added to stock issues. The first line of Amiibo outside of the Smash Bros. Series came out alongside Mario Party 10, that being the first wave of Super Mario Amiibo. These figures were well stocked and incredibly easy to find, with a slight exception being Toad, but an even bigger exception being the figure that made collectors go insane that was exclusive to Walmart, Gold Mario. I always had a feeling that Gold Mario was easier to find than, say, Shulk or Ike, but the fact that it was a special variant amiibo made this thing the apple of many collectors' eyes. Wave 4 then came out alongside the release of Splatoon, which also got 3 amiibo of its own, plus a companion figure to Gold Mario, Silver Mario. This was when I believe amiibo hit its peak. So many figures were released on the same day, and on top of that, there were more niche characters such as Robin, Lucina, and Ness. When pre-orders for these figures went up, GameStop's website crashed. Barely anybody got Ness when the wave initially hit. Fans were still pretty mad at how amiibo were being handled, but lucky for them, their problem would soon be resolved, but also, it would take a lot of the fun out of amiibo collecting. The next wave of Smash Bros. Amiibo was a bit spread out. 2 retailer-exclusive amiibo, Dark Pit and Palutena, came out in the summer while the rest of the wave came out all throughout September. And this wave was incredibly easy to obtain. It seemed like Nintendo finally got a hold of their stock problems in North America. They actually restocked a bunch of rarer amiibo too. It was finally possible to get a hold of Shulk, Lucario, Ike, etc. The retailer exclusivity for certain amiibo broke off too, which meant it was easy to walk into a store, grab a Shulk amiibo, and walk out. Maybe a little too easy. Nintendo ramped up amiibo production tenfold when they saw the increasing demand for the product, but the problem was, the Smash Bros. Line was dwindling in terms of characters they could make figures out of. People were buying the other series of amiibo, but it was the Smash series that kept everybody there. Nintendo needed a new line to keep people interested, so they launched the Animal Crossing series to coincide with the releases of Happy Home Designer and a ton of Animal Crossing amiibo were released, and there was definitely stock, possibly of the over variety. There's a few things that went sour with amiibo in late 2015. Animal Crossing simply didn't have the mass appeal of the Smash line. Now, of course, that's not to despair Animal Crossing as a popular franchise, it's one of Nintendo's top series. The thing is, Smash is a crossover featuring all of Nintendo's most beloved IP. No matter who you were, there was a figure in the Smash series you had some kind of connection to. Animal Crossing simply didn't have that. The only market there was for the Animal Crossing line were Animal Crossing fans and amiibo collectors. Nintendo was pushing amiibo for games that just didn't live up to their legacy. Chibi Robo Ziplash was heavily marketed alongside a Chibi Robo amiibo, and this game blows! Happy Home Designer was relatively lackluster for most people, as it felt more like Animal Crossing Lite rather than a completely separate spin-off, and these were games that Nintendo made simply to sell figurines, and they lacked a lot of the heart and soul that was required to inspire people to go out and buy figures for these games. I think it would have been better to have multiple series of amiibo coming out consistently rather than 70% Animal Crossing, 30% other. How about like 4 Animal Crossing figures come out alongside 4 Kirby figures, 4 new Mario figures, a new Splatoon figure, you know, waves like that with more variety rather than basically nothing but Animal Crossing for half a year with some random figures like Wolf Link and Lucas being thrown in there. Overall, I think this was the biggest problem with amiibo running from late 2015 to 2016. Nintendo simply made too many. This took a lot of the fun out of collecting. Yeah, you could finally pick up a Gold Mario at most retailers for $12.99, but that takes a lot of the satisfaction and value out of finally getting one. It took a lot of the urgency out of having to immediately pick up a figure, because in due time these amiibo would be in the clearance bin. There's no denying the stock problems Nintendo faced in the early days of amiibo were ridiculous and definitely anti-consumer, but making them too readily available takes a lot of the fun out of collecting. Amiibo definitely took a hit in terms of consumer interest from 2015 to 2016. The Smash Bros. Line basically consisted of trickling out figures of DLC characters. Animal Crossing was still going hard for the first half of 2016. A Kirby line came out in tandem with Planet Robobot. New Splatoon figures, a new wave of Mario figures, that was basically it. There was little reason to get people interested in the toy line, and it seemed as if Nintendo was pumping the brakes on Amiibo until a little game called Breath of the Wild came out. When the Nintendo Switch launched, so did Breath of the Wild alongside a few amiibo for the game, and these things sold out hard. Everybody was crazy for the game, so these amiibo did really well. However, there weren't stock problems. If you really wanted these figures, you could pick them up no problem on release. But anytime after that, yeah, they were sold out. And really, ever since then, Nintendo hasn't seen a similar sales flop with amiibo like they did with the Animal Crossing series. Even the Fire Emblem amiibo, which definitely has a smaller audience than say the Zelda ones or even Animal Crossing, didn't sit in clearance bins, but were relatively easy to find a week or so after release. And if you want to get a hold of the Zelda amiibo, then just wait it out because Nintendo has been doing steady yet conservative restocks. It finally seems Nintendo has figured out how to properly stock amiibo. There hasn't been a ton of headaches or stock problems with the Toys to Life line. Those tropes carry on with Nintendo's mini consoles. And there also hasn't been recent amiibo overflowing store shelves due to nobody buying them. Nintendo has finally figured out the perfect amount of amiibo to send to stores. And if they keep this up, then amiibo is far from dead. And wait, did anybody else totally forget these things work with games? Yeah, these suckers have in-game functionality. That's nuts! Smash Brothers is one of the best examples of amiibo support, and that was the game these things launched with. It was pretty neat to train my own little Pac-Man to fight just like I do. Most of the time the functionality is just, oh, you got a random little item in the game. Oh, you got a costume. Or, oh, you got a mode or unlockable that should have been unlocked in the game after beating it rather than being forced behind an amiibo paywall. As amiibo are starting to become popular again, it seems like Nintendo is focusing less and less on in-game functionality and more so just making amiibo cool collectibles. Look at Breath of the Wild, the amiibo just give you in-game items. Seems a bit like an afterthought in my opinion. Or when they revealed the Pikmin amiibo for Hey Pikmin, they basically shrugged it off in small text what the functionality of the amiibo was. Well, if Nintendo isn't interested in giving amiibo purpose, I sure as hell won't miss an opportunity to kill an afternoon, and I'll do it myself. So, hi everybody, and welcome to How Many Amiibo Can I Fit in My Mouth? Let's pick one at random here. Damn it!
Hey y'all, Scott here. I am professional. Oh, wait, sorry. Merriam-Webster just changed the spelling of that word. So, let me start again. I am professional. Sometimes it's good to state the obvious.
Yeah, I'm a gamer. I give a fuck.
So naturally, you gotta put your money where your mouth is. Wear it loud and proud. How else will your burglar know?
Oh god, let's get out of here. This gamer gives a fuck.
A professional video game console. That's it! The go-to solution to prove you mean business. You require the best possible experience because I will not tolerate anything less than perfection from my games.
I'm worth more than this.
I need my games to run the best, look the best, be the best, because this can go f itself. Well, thankfully, turns out there's a product out there for the exact kind of gamer I am.
Okay, but picture this. My name is fucking stupid.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Hey y'all, fucking stupid here.
A pro console. Mid-generation refresh, revision, upgrade, whatever you want to call them. It don't matter. We all know what these are. It's the system you know and love on the juice. A nice concept, no doubt. I mean, who'd pass up a more powerful console? Why the man with only $749 to spare? Hey now, these are non-essential luxury upgrades. You're not expected to buy them. You're expected to want to. Witness Play Unleashed? The most impressive visuals, astonishing detail, advanced ray tracing? Oh my god, I need that so bad. This isn't just ray tracing, whatever that is. It's now advanced whatever that is. All right, you got me, Sony. I'll bite. Again. Yeah, this ain't our first rodeo. We've been down this exact path before with the PlayStation 4 Pro back in 2016. I remember seeing rumors floating around about a PlayStation 4.5 or 4K, eventually seeing the codename Neo popping up with Sony officially confirming the project was in the works right before E3 2016, telling us to expect 4K support and improved graphics. And lo and behold, when they finally announced the thing later that September, they said it had 4K support and improved graphics. What a reveal! Next you're gonna tell me it has 4K support and improved graphics. Oh my god. At 399 bones, this costs the same as the original standard PS4 did back when it launched in 2013, which at this point in time was only $299, so I don't think this was an unreasonable upgrade. But I'd say for the majority of pre-existing PS4 users, it was an unnecessary one. Like, here's a game on PS4, then here's PS4 Pro. Night and day difference? In Alaska, sure. Nah, but I mean, it says it right in the name. This is still just a PS4. It's just for freaks now. If all you're expecting is a slightly more stable and higher quality experience across the board, then it's hard to be disappointed in the PS4 Pro. If all you're expecting is what the marketing made it out to be.
Wow, that's a fair price for Jesus Christ himself.
What the hell are you talking about, inspiring new worlds? The PS4 Pro never received any exclusive games or really anything more than enhanced frame rates and resolutions. What you're implying here is with the power of this console, developers can finally fulfill their wildest fantasies, bringing you to worlds never before possible. Behold, Horizon Zero Dawn with 2 more blades of grass. Now, I personally upgraded to this console on Black Friday 2018. This Red Dead 2 bundle was $399, plus it came with a $50 GameStop gift card. Absolute no-brainer. Of course, I could have bought something I didn't already own a nearly identical variant of, but no, see, like, game was $60 on its own, $50 gift card, plus the unbeatable feeling that taking advantage of a deal brings you.
I'm in debt.
To be fair, I think by this point, the Pro was a far sounder buy than it was within its first year or so on the market. Back when it launched, games would only run better on the platform if they got PS4 Pro specific patches. And even then, some games ran worse here than they did on PS4. What the hell was that about?
I don't know, but I hope it helps in my never-ending quest to figure out what this word means.
Well, eventually, Sony introduced this here boost mode feature, basically forcing games to run better, even if they weren't designed with PS4 Pro in mind. Alright, now we're getting somewhere. What else can this thing do?
Well, the ability to not play 4K Blu-rays. God, what the f does it mean?
Listen, I'm not gonna act like I have this big collection of 4K Blu-rays I'm itching to watch on my PS4 Pro. But what if I did? You don't know me. I just find it incredibly odd that this console, with this massive focus on how it can output at 4K resolution, released by one of the main companies behind the Blu-ray format, doesn't support 4K Blu-rays. But you know what did? The Xbox One S, which released months before the PS4 Pro at $299 and was not positioned as a Pro console. Yeah, this was for fucking dweebs, not fucking dorks. Now, why did Sony not include this feature? Well, let me ask general audience out here on the street.
Did you want the PS4 Pro to include 4K Blu-ray support?
To be fair, that wasn't a no.
Boy, me personally, I'd say I got some good use out of my Pro. I picked it up alongside this PlayStation VR bundle, which honestly probably was where the Pro shined the most. Smaller improvements go a long way in VR to provide you with the most immersive experience possible, and with the PSVR looking like this on the original PS4, I will take whatever I can get.
Well, thanks for whatever I can get.
To be fair, a lot of the improvements brought forth by PS4 Pro are only really noticeable when you're actually playing it. So when I'm looking at these comparison videos online and the comments are going, my god, the differences. It's like comparing Jesus to Satan himself. I mean, I'm looking at this and going, I think I'm agnostic. When you're actually using a Pro, things definitely feel pretty smooth here, but to be honest, while I'd play this thing, I'd be thinking, wow, these games look so good, it must be that PS4 Pro magic. Can't imagine what they look like on some dog shit regular PS4, when in reality, yeah, I could. Going back to the base console isn't nearly as bad as you'd think it would be. Playing on the Pro long enough will do that to you. Really made me think the original PS4 would be this intolerable mess, when in reality, I mean, most games are designed to run well on this hardware. Yeah, this is better, but it's nothing drastic. But hey, maybe that's just my little old Nintendo baby bitch brain tolerating looking at dog shit visuals for hours on end.
This Nintendo game looks fine.
I'll give Sony this. They made it pretty damn obvious this ain't for everyone. That you really weren't missing out on much by sticking with a base PS4. At least for the time being. I mean, one of the big inclusions here was HDR support, which really wasn't popularized in TVs until a few years later. And by that point, the PS5 was on the horizon. That's sort of the point of this console. It helped future-proof the PS4, so by the time we got to the PS5, it wasn't like falling apart or anything. But you could have very reasonably stuck with a regular PS4 throughout that whole generation. And you would have been so sexy doing it! This original system has one of the most striking yet functional designs of any console. On an unrelated note, the PS4 Pro always looked dumb as hell to me. Like, oh, how can we convey this as a more powerful PS4?
Well, they do say two-layer consoles are for pussies.
What the hell is this? This just tries to expand upon the original PS4's design, but completely misses the point. Like, this was a sleek rhombus with these quadrants, this divide housing the disc slot, these segments being the power and eject buttons extending into this light. It's so unique, yet incredibly practical. Unlike a certain white bastard. Oh, give me more credit. In comparison, while the PS4 Pro's design is practical, it took the perfect look of the PS4 and removed all defining elements aside from the PS4 looks like a sandwich, don't it? So make it a bigger sandwich! Yeah, and with this design language, we never have to think about what the next PS4 Pro will look like ever again.
My ceiling.
The PS4 Pro wasn't a game changer, but it definitely helped organically extend the PS4's lifespan. And hey, you needed something to compete with whatever the hell Xbox was cooking up, because right alongside talk of an improved PS4, there were the exact same kind of rumors floating around about an improved Xbox One. Project Scorpio was the codename announced at E3 2016, affirming that this is going to be the most powerful console ever crafted. Jesus Christ, I mean, the PS4 Pro wasn't even formally announced yet, and they were already saying, yeah, it's more powerful than that. Hey, I mean, that's exactly what us gamers love to hear, right? No pissing around, not telling us specs don't matter, your feelings do. No, 6 teraflops of GPU power, 8 CPU cores, over 320 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. This guy straight up said to me, these are the specs gamers want.
Oh, it's everything I've ever wanted! Somebody talking to me!
What exactly am I gonna do with any of this information? I'm not making games for the thing. But with how dramatic they're spilling this info, you'd think this was to be like a life-changing product. They're saying this was the console everybody's been waiting for. It's removing barriers, limitations, there's endless possibilities. They're really going for it. They're creating something unlike anything you've ever seen before. And I'm like, guys, it's just a better Xbox One. It's the same as the PS4 Pro's marketing. Like, what creative possibilities does this new hardware truly bring you? Well, in this reveal trailer, Todd Howard says it's great this machine is powerful enough for Fallout 4 VR. Like, okay, virtual reality support. Sure, that's reason enough to get excited over the possibilities here. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Imagine the possibilities? That means anything's possible! Even this not being possible!
Okay, sure, at the time, these specs were a pretty big leap. But because it's still just an Xbox One and it can't have exclusive experiences to it, all this upgrade really amounts to is an Xbox One that plays the same games at high resolutions, frame rates, with faster load times, which is great and all, but the way they're announcing this, I feel like I should be crying. To be fair, this was Microsoft's last big push to turn things around this generation. I mean, the Xbox One was originally less powerful than the PS4. Now, halfway through, you're telling me all these games are actually gonna run better on Xbox? Well, here's how Microsoft expected us to respond.
Well, golly, I gotta get me one right there, Xbox.
Here's how I did.
You!
What the hell? I just spent all this time building up my library on PS4 because that was where all these third-party games ran and looked the best. But that's just not the case anymore. Years later, Phil Spencer of Xbox said this was the worst generation for them to lose, as everybody built up their game libraries, which sort of locked them into sticking with that specific console brand. So it's obvious in hindsight, even with this new Xbox having the best specs and being the spot to play third-party games, didn't mean a damn thing to most PS4 owners. You already set shop up there. Nothing was gonna make you change your mind. Not even, damn it, my Achilles heel. Whatever the fuck that is. Now, Microsoft definitely needed a leg up on Sony at the time, and because they couldn't really compete with the PS4's game lineup, they decided to focus elsewhere, like backwards compatibility, introducing Xbox Game Pass, and having the best hardware on the market. Definitely made for some healthy competition and gave us a lot to think about as consumers. Would you rather have the most powerful game console, or a game console with games you want to play?
Game console with games I want to play.
Well, what came of this project released in November of 2017 at 499 bones, it's the Xbox One X. Not the Xbox One B, G, P, or H. Nah, this is the letter that conveys power, and it's cute while it does it. Many have pointed out when abbreviated, Xbox One X is Xbox. Well, I was rooting for Xbox One Next Gen or NG, but yeah, that don't work as well. And hey, if you were strangely attached to the Project Scorpio name, you were thrown a bone with the limited Project Scorpio edition of the console. There were rumors of the final name just flat out being Xbox Scorpio, but I don't know. I'm sure some retailer had to input something at one point, and Xbox Scorpio makes more sense than Project Scorpio. And I think some people believed it because sometimes you get so used to a codename being used for so long, you start to think, oh yeah, that makes sense on store shelves. But logistically, you start naming your Xboxes after astrology signs, it ain't gonna end well. But I think this name makes a ton of sense, especially next to the Xbox One S. It's pretty clear cut. This is the powerful one, this is the slim one, even though the Xbox One X is slimmer. And this is one of the most basic designs for any game console I've ever seen, but I can't deny how it looks really nice. It may just be a black box, but it's one hell of a sleek one. Weirdly enough, it's shaped sort of like a mirrored PlayStation 2. And you know what's the coolest thing about that? You can do whatever you want with that information. I don't care. Well, damn, this is just the ultimate Xbox One now, ain't it? Then I should just hop right in. What the hell am I waiting for?
for the poison I just drank to take effect.
Listen, I'm not saying the Xbox One X isn't a great piece of hardware, at least for its time. But regardless of how powerful these Xbox consoles are, it's hard for me to fully appreciate them when I have just had the worst experiences with their menu systems. They're so sluggish and glitchy. Every time I want to jump into a game, there's a million updates, and for some reason, these Xbox systems always feel the slowest when downloading or installing anything. Hell, booting this thing up takes so damn long, even compared to an original PS4. It takes its damn time, even adds this whole animation at the beginning showing the 4K chip going to work. The Xbox One X is more than happy giving you the best quality console experience. The only thing it asks for in return is your self-respect.
You take as much time as you want, I don't matter.
Okay, now, while the speed may be less than desirable at times, the end results are still pretty damn good, especially if you were upgrading from an original Xbox One, which, yeah, this is rough to go back to. I mean, you can do it. You can also do this, and I can't even show it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Because of how quickly that original console was aging, I'd say this was a far more necessary upgrade than the PS4 Pro was. But it also wasn't at the same time. In terms of performance, the Xbox One X is honestly pretty comparable to its successor, the Xbox Series X, in many ways. Now, obviously, the Series X is better, but I was pretty impressed with how well the One X holds up. Though, looking back in hindsight, the fact that this console only had 3 years in the limelight just to be replaced with an actual next-gen machine with the lifespan of a normal game system that did everything the One X did, plus play exclusive new games launching at the exact same price, almost makes this feel like a waste of time in the grand scheme of things. Hell, it was even discontinued just a few months before the Series X launched. As good of a product the Xbox One X is, it is the definition of a stopgap. Now, you could say the same about any of these Pro consoles, but that feeling really smacks you in the face here. The Series X pretty much just added upon what the One X was already doing, with the most tangible upgrade being far faster load times. But that doesn't mean this wasn't a great device. I wouldn't call it a great console, but it was a great device. While they did quickly replace it, the Xbox One X served its purpose and then some during its time on the shelves. I'd say this was a great first attempt at a pro console revision by Microsoft, but I'd be lying, because it wasn't their first attempt. Remember this thing? The Xbox One Elite, released in November of 2015 at $499, came bundled with the fancy-ass Elite controller, but more notably featured 1 terabyte of hybrid storage, meaning you got the size capacity of a standard mechanical hard drive with some of the benefits of a much faster loading SSD. So this version of the console loads everything a bit quicker, which a quicker Xbox One is like a softer, jagged knife.
This felt better than the last. In addition, the console now has a matte finish instead of a glossy one, or half of it is, I guess. The Elite still has a glossy finish on the right side because I guess that's a crucial element to the Xbox One experience, which, you know, makes sense. This was actually a pretty damn good deal considering this Elite controller on its own was $150. I mean, the console in the package was $350, and with storage like this back in 2015, you'd be a fool not to scoop this up at that price. I mean, what would you rather have?
Game console with games I want to play.
Now, this definitely isn't doing the same sort of thing as an Xbox One X or PS4 Pro, but neither was this, yet would you look at that, I'm talking about it anyways. The Xbox 360 Pro. Yeah, what makes this pro? Well, it has a hard drive.
Oh, you're still listening?
The Xbox 360 console variations always confused the hell out of me with their names back in the day. I had no idea what the difference between the Core, Arcade, and Elite were. On top of finding out now there was another model called the Pro. Okay, Core pretty much just means this is the core package, the bare essentials. Though, as a kid, I thought this was referring to the hardcore gamer, but no, I wouldn't even piss in this thing's direction. But then they replaced the Core with the Arcade, which, okay, I guess they were going for, hey, this is the fucking family fun box, but why call it Arcade when you could just call it that? And then there's the Elite, the big boy, best-in-class edition of the 360. So, okay, this was the replacement for the Xbox 360 Pro.
Actually, let me correct that statement. There we go.
None of these names meant a goddamn thing. What made the Xbox 360 Pro Pro? It had a hard drive. The Elite? Bigger hard drive. Hell, I don't see the term Xbox 360 Pro anywhere outside of ancient store listings and press releases. On the Elite's box, they have this diagram explaining the differences, and the Pro It's just called the Xbox 360. Man, what was the point of all these title distinctions when fundamentally the Arcade, Pro, and Elite are all the same? They just have different hard drives, which that's not unique. You can remove and swap them around. Strange how you have these Xbox consoles named like this, and if anything, the Xbox One S is more of a pro console than they ever were. 4K Blu-ray support, and it was actually a bit more powerful than the original Xbox One. Yet this is marketed more to the casual consumer, and these come with the strict guideline for not pussies only. Well, hey, pro consoles don't necessarily need a name that conveys how the word girth makes me feel. Take, for example, the supercharged, power-hungry follow-up to Game Boy.
God damn, I love power.
If any company is guilty of pumping out pro consoles, oddly enough, it's Nintendo. They just don't really label them as such. Like what, does the name Nintendo DSi make me less insecure about what I'm doing here? But in many ways, these are sort of the ultimate pro consoles because they often give you legitimate reasons to upgrade to them. On paper, the Game Boy Color, Nintendo DSi, and new Nintendo 3DS are all upgraded handhelds with better internals, unique features, but most notably, the ability to play exclusive games. That's something all the other consoles we've looked at have steered clear from, but not Nintendo. No, they said the Nintendo DSi is too powerful to waste this opportunity.
Upgrade or get left behind.
The DSi's exclusive games mostly came in the form of downloadable titles, which makes total sense. You know, there's no way you could accidentally buy a digital DSi game for your DS Lite. But for some reason, a couple companies put a few out at retail because this can't be contained. It's really strange considering something like this hair salon game definitely didn't need to be a DSi exclusive. You rarely ever use the built-in camera, and when you do, it's just this superfluous little bonus thing. Plenty of DS games have DSi exclusive features where this kind of stuff works on a DSi, but is disabled on a regular DS. Why this couldn't have been just that is beyond me, but hey, Photo Showdown and System Flaw use the DSi more extensively, so alright. Keep up the pace with these exclusives, and I'll consider saying the DSi having exclusive retail games wasn't a complete waste.
Huh. Consider it considered.
Yet not only are these exclusive games few and far between, but they weren't impactful in the slightest. I am sorry, System Flaw truthers. But when we're talking what makes the DSi unique, we're mainly talking the downloadable games. And, okay, the Nintendo DSi is more powerful than a standard DS, yeah. But you don't see too much of that horsepower on display within the games themselves. You mostly see it in the menus, which, hey, the DSi doesn't have an aneurysm if you eject a game like the original systems did.
Hey now, if somebody ripped this out of you, you'd probably freeze up too.
Now, some games do run a bit better on DSi, like Sonic Classic Collection, but the majority of games that are DSi enhanced just include bonus camera functionality. 99% of the DS games you play here run exactly as they do on a normal DS. What the DSi brings to the table is a more stable and functional menu infrastructure, downloadable games, and dicking around. There's definitely more substantial additions here than with something like the PS4 Pro, but while that Pro console focused on the games, the DSi kind of focuses on everything surrounding them. Case in point, removing the Game Boy Advance slot. What, I'm paying for this? Could have done this myself just with some spackle. Definitely made it harder to consider this upgrade, as you're effectively cutting the games playable on DS in half. Now obviously the percentage of people actively playing GBA games on their DS was low enough for them to warrant doing this, but that don't make it right. You looking to up your game? Boom! Everybody's doing it, so no, I wouldn't call the DSi an ideal pro console upgrade. I think it was necessary to bring the DS platform more up to speed with what you'd expect out of a game system in 2009. And while this does meet the quota for what I'd consider to be a pro console, I don't think it does a great job at being one. The new Nintendo 3DS, on the other hand, this is a pro console through and through. The increased horsepower improves the user experience so much. Now, instead of having a god-awful web browser, the new 3DS just has a shitty one. The enhanced speed of everything, I wouldn't call it fast, I'd just say it's tolerable now. A nice assortment of titles take advantage of the improved hardware with faster load times, higher quality graphics, better frame rates. I mean, this is the definitive spot to play the worst version of Hyrule Warriors. We got an extra set of shoulder buttons alongside censor that. The C-Stick! You know, in the early days of the 3DS, people were begging for a revised model with a second circle pad included. But you know what I said? I said, yeah, but I don't want that right now. I want that in 4 years. And I also want something that isn't a second circle pad. This is an immovable pencil eraser-ass nub meant for camera control and very little else. And very little else includes just more camera control. It reads where your thumb is like a touchscreen input. I guess it does the job for basic camera movements, but it's not ideal in the slightest. I wouldn't say it's bad, I wouldn't say it's good. I'd say it's just right at being damn strange. Like the DSi, New 3DS also received some exclusive titles, though these were far more compelling, with even more as digital downloads, like Super Nintendo games. Yeah, those were only playable on New 3DS. With the awesome power of this supercharged hardware, this is finally possible on the 3DS.
Who knew dog shit could run cat shit?
I refuse to believe they couldn't get Super Nintendo games running on the original 3DS systems. I mean, fans have got this working. It's more than possible. This definitely reads to me as Nintendo trying to add more value to the new 3DS and just kind of forcing these to be exclusives. But I think considering everything else it's bringing to the table, this was kind of a no-brainer of an upgrade. I just think it came out a little too late for many to give a damn. For me personally, by the time this launched, the 3DS wasn't really my primary focus in gaming. I would still play it consistently, but not enough to warrant buying into this premium version. The vast majority of games I would crack my 3DS out for didn't really need the new 3DS, and certain additions like the super stable eye-tracking 3D screen and NFC reader for built-in amiibo support. Well, when I would play my 3DS, I wasn't really using the 3D or amiibos with it all too much. Now, I did finally upgrade to one of these units in 2016, and goddamn, I played through one hell of a Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D on it. Now, did I need a new 3DS to do that? These were both solid upgrades, but when you're actually in the thick of it playing most games, there's not really much of a difference. I think these Pro consoles are most compelling when you see massive improvements across the board. For example, the Game Boy Color might just be the most impactful Pro console upgrade of all time.
If only I could tell.
Now, I've been pretty damn picky about the concept of Game Boy Color being nothing but an upgrade to the original Game Boy because I always considered it to be the very first true successor. I claimed I'd be dead and buried by the time I admit that, but no, Nintendo officially lumps Game Boy Color in whenever they talk about the original Game Boy, so alright, I concede.
Considering I have 17 minutes to live, I thought, might as well.
But I mean, could you blame me for thinking that way? Just look at all of the exclusive Game Boy Color games that released. And most of them also work on the original Game Boy. Yeah, I have no idea how I've never heard anybody talk about any sort of confusion surrounding this. Like, barely anything on this package tells me this game will work on a regular Game Boy. It's all on the cartridge itself. If it's black, you're good to go. If it's see-through, whatever's the opposite of this.
I'm about to stop.
Alright, so even if these were labeled as Game Boy Color games on the packaging, fundamentally, these were still just original Game Boy games that were programmed with full color support in mind when played on a Game Boy Color. But what about the older standard gray Game Boy cartridges? The game's only ever designed for black and white. It says here on the box they'll play in enhanced color. Oh boy, Super Mario Land in color? Holy shit. They've really undersold this. It's not just in color, it's in 2 colors. Original Game Boy games on Game Boy Color look better, I guess, but the added color does feel a bit unnatural at times. It's blatantly obvious these games were never designed with color in mind, so Nintendo just assigned basic limited color palettes to them. Though it is really impressive how well these work out sometimes. Thing is, Nintendo took as much of the original pre-Game Boy Color library of titles as they could and pre-assigned appropriate color palettes to each of them. So deep in the Game Boy Color's code is the sentence, "Make Bubble Ghost green." But hell, if the assigned palette isn't doing it for you, you can swap between a bunch others. Like, yeah, this is how I feel today.
Disturbed.
Listen, Game Boy Color may not give these older games the most colorful graphics, but it's better than nothing. Something like Donkey Kong Land is damn near playable now, even if the added color doesn't really look good, it still improves the experience and showcases how the Game Boy Color was a necessary upgrade, not a luxury one. Unlike the Nintendo Switch OLED model, which is for the anti-peasant. Jesus Christ, talk about an unnecessary upgrade. I mean, it's a good product, but all of the additions here feel like they're building up to something greater. A bigger OLED screen.
Yeah.
A dock with built-in Ethernet.
Okay.
Double the internal storage.
Go on.
That's it.
Fuck you.
While I was always happy with my Switch OLED, it did feel like an incomplete product to me. Something that would have made more sense if it was, I don't know, an actual Pro console, a Nintendo Switch Pro, if you will. Pretty obvious, even just a couple years into the Switch's life, that it desperately needed some extra juice. I mean, even Nintendo themselves were putting out assy-looking content. Like, there's no way they were thinking, oh, this is all we need. If any console deserved a Pro model, it was this one. And we got it all right.
By this logic, I'm a pro version of my dad.
Playing Nintendo Switch 1 games on Switch 2 can yield incredible results.
Hey, that's incredible in its own special way.
For the most part, Switch 1 games can run so much better on Switch 2. Of course, it depends what game you try. Some games, there's no difference at all. Some games don't work at all. But thanks to the better specs, some games that had frame rate issues before are actually stable now. Plus, some got updates bumping the resolution to 4K. This is a great successor. Wait, what is that? Oh my God! Wait. Oh, Jesus!
See, this is what these pro consoles have done. They've warped my perception on what a console successor should look like. They make the current generation feel better while making the next generation feel lesser. But hey, in the case of the PlayStation 5 Pro, it makes me feel lesser.
I'm so fucking stupid.
The PlayStation 5 Pro released in November of 2024 at 699 bones.
Oh, could this get any worse?
It is now 750.
Oh, could this get any worse?
All right, I'll stop. When rumors of a PS5 Pro started circulating, it just didn't feel right. Like, the PlayStation 5 didn't really ever feel like it was necessarily being pushed to its limits. Like, this console already wasn't enough. Sure, there's been a few examples of big games running poorly, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Black Myth Wukong, but are the issues with these games truly because the PS5 just isn't powerful enough? Or is it more so because of some hiccups on the development side of things? I would assume it wouldn't have been impossible to get these games running better, but logistically, it probably would have taken too much time and money to get that to happen. Though I'm sure these issues could have been ironed out, says the not game developer.
Hey, go f*** yourself. I know game development. I've played Assassin's Creed 2 for 40 minutes.
Even when you can point to some games running suboptimally, PS5 Pro didn't feel warranted to me. The PlayStation 5 library was filled to the brim with games also releasing on PS4, and thanks to the PS4 Pro, the line dividing these console generations was blurrier than ever before. The PS5 generation just felt like it never truly fully started. Like we didn't see the full potential of this system since most PS5 games were designed to work on a base PS4. And now you're saying this console isn't enough? At least the PS4 Pro had the excuse of bumping things up to 4K. The PS5 Pro? Well, 8K of course! And yes, the PS8 Pro will support 20K. Who the hell had an 8K TV in 2024? Actually, I have a better question. The original PS5 shipped with an 8K logo on the box back in 2020. Oh hey, my Atari comes with wireless controllers. So I guess Sony wanted to future-proof the PS5 by giving it the capability of outputting at 8K, but nothing really ever used it, and it's not even something you can enable in the console's options. Hell, because of that, the one game that actually supported 8K on PS5 couldn't be viewed in 8K. The PS5 will only let you do 4K output. And when this is the PS5's one 8K game we're talking about, like, it's a nice looking game and all, but it's obvious that it could achieve 8K due to its simpler style. Still definitely a cool feat, but I wouldn't say this is a great showcase for 8K gaming. So the PS5 could do 8K, but it couldn't do 8K. And with no real video content available in 8K, alongside nobody buying 8K TVs, Sony quietly removed that logo from PS5 packaging. So even though the PS5 Pro actually does some 8K stuff, it's obvious 8K isn't a selling point. So what the hell is then? Well, Sony announced they were holding a PlayStation technical presentation, which does not sound like this is where they're revealing a new console. It sounds like this is where they're revealing the weather. But I guess they did that to temper expectations, because the PS5 Pro is not meant for average everyday consumers. Hell, I don't even think it's meant for somebody who enjoys the finer things in life. It's like, I would argue 99% of the people buying iPhone Pros just want the nicest iPhone. They're not gonna use any of the things that make it pro. I should know. But even for those kind of people, I think the PS5 Pro is pushing it a bit. This was meant for people who not only knew what ray tracing was, but actively cared about it. So it went from 2 people to 1. This presentation got right to it. The PS5 has a problem, and it's the fact that gamers have to choose between 4K visuals and high frame rates. Fidelity versus performance. Which side are you on? Buddy, you're too old to say you're not into politics. Most players would opt for performance mode, as it just flat out feels better to play a game at 60 frames per second. And while fidelity mode is fideliter, I mean, putting them side by side, is there really a noticeable difference? Yeah, if we zoom in, you can probably point something out, but like, we're splitting hairs here. Oh, but the ray tracing is better in graphics mode. That's what's taking up so much computing power the game has to run at 30 frames per second?
You wanna see all my pores? It's gonna cost ya.
To be honest, a few years back, I wasn't really all too observant when it came to frame rates. Didn't care if a game was running at 30, 60, what the hell ever. I wasn't thinking about it all too much. I mean, the PS4 Pro mostly advertised 4K visuals. The original PS5 was mostly advertising faster load times and the coolest fucking thing ever. So when given the choice, not only was graphics mode usually the default, but I didn't understand why it shouldn't be. So when I played some of my first few PS5 games like Spider-Man Miles Morales and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, they were all running at 30 frames per second. And knowing what I know now, jumping into these games with performance mode enabled, what the f was my problem? This feels infinitely better. But at what cost? The puddles aren't as shiny and reflective? Buddy, normal puddles aren't meant to look this good. You ever look outside? The real world looks like shit. Well, regardless, PS5 Pro aimed to combine performance and fidelity modes, giving you the highest quality visuals at the highest possible frame rates. Behold how games will look on PS5 Pro. One of the biggest issues with these Pro consoles is how difficult it is to really notice any substantial differences via these comparisons online. When you have to slow down footage and zoom in to notice anything, you're pretty much admitting right there this isn't a necessary upgrade. It's like they have to convince you there's a difference. And yeah, there is. But during this presentation, when they're using a PS4 game to showcase the PS5 Pro and it's like the hardest game of spot the difference I've ever endured, I mean, it just begs the questions. Why is this necessary? Who is this for? Because if you looked at the original PS5 and thought that isn't enough for you, Bubba, I think you just need to switch over to PC at that point. But hey, I get it. The console lifestyle is a hard one to give up, and even when the PS5 Pro retailed for $700, that's still cheaper than building a high-end PC in most cases. Though to be fair, I'd say if you're buying a PS5 Pro, you probably already had a PS5 to begin with, so that's about $1,200 spent overall. But if you're a Pro user, you're probably pretty passionate about your collection of video games, so moving to PC doesn't make sense if you want to keep playing the...
Where were you when you found out your god was dead?
The PS5 Pro is a disc-free console by default. Oh, what? They'll say this, but they won't call it an asbestos-free console? That's f***ed up. So, the redesigned PS5 Slim that hit store shelves in 2023 had a detachable disk drive, which, on one hand, requires a one-time internet connection to register and verify it upon connecting it to your console. Everybody, say it with me now. But on the other hand, I really like that this meant a PS5 Digital Edition could be upgraded to one with a disc drive later down the line if you wanted to purchase the attachment. With the original, if you bought a digital model, you were stuck with a digital model. So this change is good for the consumer, and it makes things easier for Sony. Instead of having to produce 2 different PS5s, you just have one single model with a disc drive on the side, either included in the box or available separately. Now, the PS5 Pro, I think Sony's rationale was, this is a niche product, so why bother having 2 versions on store shelves? You can just buy the disc drive separately anyways. Who cares? Vertical stand sold separately. Oh, and the controller included here? Not the pro-oriented DualSense Edge. No. Just a regular-ass PS5 controller. Not that that isn't fine. It's just I don't see $750 of value here. That's nearly twice the price of a regular PS5 digital edition. And when you're not including a disc drive, DualSense Edge, hell, a damn vertical stand which came in the box with the original PS5 model, I just start to think the unthinkable. That's impossible. But listen, when I say that, I'm not saying the components that make up a PS5 Pro aren't expensive. When you consider all the tech packed into this thing, the price point makes more sense than it doesn't. But does that actually make this a worthwhile product? Because in the end, most of these games look and run the damn same here. Think about it this way, $400 table, $700 table. The $700 table is more premium. It's made out of finer wood. Still a fucking table. And it's not like the $400 table is bad. I mean, it's $400 damn dollars. That's a lot of money. It does everything a table should. It's built to last. The $700 one costs more to produce, so it's not like they're ripping you off, but like, you just don't need this when this does everything that does at a comparable quality at nearly half the price. But okay, let's see what the PS5 Pro does that's just so damn special. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. All right, finally, we don't have to deal with no damn performance mode versus quality mode, just one single. You gotta be fucking kidding me. All right, so we still have two options here, though both of them are supercharged, I guess. Performance mode now looks like it's running at a far higher resolution thanks to PSSR. Now, you're probably asking, Scott, what is the Soviet Union doing to up the resolution? And then I'm going, no, PSSR. Now, you're probably going, Scott, what is a pisser doing to up the resolution? PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. Basically, it's a powerful form of AI upscaling, so even when the game is running at 60 frames per second, you get a higher quality image. But if you want an even higher quality image, a naturally higher quality image, you have Fidelity Mode Pro. I find with some games on PS5 Pro, there's too many options where I get a bit confused, like, okay, Spider-Man 2 also has Performance Pro and Fidelity Pro. Then these other graphical options pop up when selecting Fidelity Pro, and I'm just wondering, like, if I'm picking Fidelity over Performance, why wouldn't I want all these things on, or at the highest level possible? I appreciate giving me control, but having these many choices honestly worries me that I'd be playing the game with suboptimal settings without realizing it. Like, when I look back at playing those early PS5 games at 30 frames per second, like, I'm kind of upset that happened. Now, after fiddling around a bit with PS5 Pro, I have no issue stating this is the definitive PlayStation 5 console. I also have no issues not recommending it to anybody. Listen, this is a great piece of hardware. What the f*** am I getting out of this? It's like, sure, this is better, but jumping between an original PS5 and a PS5 Pro, it's really hard for me to tell any substantial differences. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't any differences, but after spending an excessive amount of time with these Pro consoles throughout history, this is sort of my feeling regarding them as a whole. For the most part, these were all great pieces of hardware for their time, but man, do I feel like I'm going crazy comparing and contrasting. A PS4 Pro feels better, but then I go back to an original PS4 and it's basically the same. It's honestly impressive how well a lot of these original consoles hold up, while also being a bit disappointing how little the Pro models actually change things. So you need to go into these things with the right expectations. I wouldn't say they're night and day differences, rather, they're the exact same console as before, with a little extra legroom. For the most part, every game is meant to run well on the base models of these consoles. The Pro versions are just that, for Pro users. And that's fine. I mean, I enjoy a slightly nicer console, but if this trend continues, I mean, with just how good graphics have gotten, it's just, we've been experiencing diminishing returns for a while. You can keep pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into developing new technologies or putting top-of-the-line specs in these consoles all you want. We're not gonna see a massive leap in visuals. Which means while the PS5 Pro makes sense on paper, I mean, it released 4 years after the PS5. The PS4 Pro released 3 years after the PS4. But in practice, it's just not all too warranted. Technology keeps evolving, but the technology from 5 years ago is still more than enough for everybody. So yeah, you can do this, I just don't see much of a use for it. And for the PS6 Pro, it's gonna be even worse. Oh, it's been 17 minutes. If you excuse me, I have business to attend to.